I'm standing in front of a floor-to-ceiling mirror in some absurdly huge villa, staring at a face that definitely wasn't mine yesterday. Handsome kid, sharp features, the whole deal. I glanced around at the marble and the chrome and the furniture that probably cost more than my entire previous life's earnings, and honestly, I almost started crying. Not from sadness, though. From joy. Pure, unfiltered joy. Is this a rebirth? And I got reborn as a rich second generation? Damn it. It's finally my turn to live the good life. See, in my previous life, I was a corporate drone. I pulled a 7-day overtime stint during the National Day holiday and literally worked myself to death. Classic. But the twist is, I didn't transmigrate to some fantasy world. I got reborn into this one, just 100,000 years in the future. A futuristic sci-fi world where humanity has spread across the entire galaxy. The only catch was that I'd lost my previous life memories after the rebirth, and they only came back today. So for 18 years I've been walking around with no idea who I really was. But let me explain the important part first, because this world has something wild. Everyone here has what they call a term. Think of it like a divine text tattooed on your soul. Whatever the text describes, that's the ability you get. Simple as that. These things have existed since the beginning of civilization and are tied to the development of the human race. Now, scattered across the galaxy are these divine realm spaces, basically pocket dimensions crawling with fierce beasts, exotic creatures, and alien races. You kill one of those creatures, there's a chance it drops something called a divine edict stone. That stone contains all the terms that monster had. You use the stone, a lottery wheel shows up, and it draws randomly from the monster's terms. Whatever you land on, you integrate that power directly into yourself. The terms come in tiers. White is the lowest, then green, blue, purple, silver, and gold. Higher tier means more powerful effects. But here's the kicker. There's a limit on how many terms a person can integrate in their entire lifetime. So every single draw matters. Pull a trash term, and you've wasted one of your precious slots on garbage. Your whole life could be ruined over one bad spin. My parents in this life were Martial Emperor level experts, both geniuses with blue terms. Tough couple. Unfortunately, they died in a demon attack, but before they went, they left behind a massive pile of assets for me. The government managed everything until I turned 18 a few days ago, and then it all got released to me. That's when my smile started fading. Because this world isn't as safe as a trust fund baby's dream. You need strength to survive here. Without it, even all the money in the galaxy won't save you. Someone will just take it. I figured I'd have to work hard after all. No lying around on a yacht and calling it a life. But at least my starting point was way above what I had before. No more overtime deaths, hopefully. So I decided to check my stats first, then see if the divine edict stones my parents left behind could get me some decent terms. I opened up my divine edict backend, which is basically this world's version of a character sheet. Everyone gets one after adulthood, kind of like a built-in game interface. Name, Ling Foam. Race, human. Occupation, none. Level, black iron 1 star. Blood chi, 1.2, which translates to about 1,200 kilograms of punch force. Soul, 0.5. Cultivation method, advanced body tempering art. Beginner level, 3rd order. Martial skill, basic fist technique, proficient, 1st order. And then there was the term. This is where things got weird. The term listed was called infinite. And the tier wasn't white, green, blue, purple, silver, or gold. It said unique. Same type of term can be stacked infinitely for upgrades, and the number of terms you can integrate is unlimited. I just stood there staring at it. Unique level? I'd never even heard of a unique tier. I knew about white through gold, and sure, people whispered about levels above gold, but unique? That was completely new. So this was a term that far exceeded gold level. And it let me stack the same type of term infinitely? Meaning even if I only stacked white terms, I could theoretically combine them into something ridiculous? This had to be my transmigrator's golden finger. The novels really don't deceive. Being reborn comes with perks after all. I accepted it pretty quick. Nobody complains about having high talent. But then a thought hit me. If I could stack the same term infinitely, even just white terms, couldn't I build a super term out of nothing but garbage tier entries? White terms are dirt cheap and easy to get. The high-level stuff is hard to come by, but white is everywhere. I didn't waste another second. I walked straight to the safe in the house. The The safe was one of those biometric vaults made from special materials, huge as a small car. I put my hand on the scanner. Fingerprint check, vein check, DNA verification, and then a cheerful electronic voice announced everything was successful and the lock was open. The massive door swung slowly outward, and inside was a pile of supplies. The flashiest stuff was one blue divine edict stone and more than 10 green ones. Scattered on the ground were also dozens of white divine edict stones. Now, divine edict stones have tiers too. White is the lowest, then green, then blue. Different colored stones correspond to different colored terms. White stones almost always give white terms. Green ones guarantee at least one green term among several draws, but whether you actually land it depends on luck. Blue ones guarantee at least one blue term mixed in with the rest. A single blue divine edict stone costs over 100 million. Regular families can't touch that price. Of course, white stones can technically yield green or even blue or purple terms, but the probability is so low it's basically a joke. My infinite term, by the way, was a self-awakened innate term. That means it was a talent I was born with, no divine edict stone needed. The probability of self-awakening any term at all is 1 in several thousand people, and that's just for a white one. An innate unique term? I wasn't even going to try to calculate those odds. I looked at the 10 green stones and frowned. Each one could be exchanged for 100 white stones, so using them felt wasteful. Better to try the white stones first. If infinite actually worked the way it sounded, I'd convert everything into whites. I picked up a white stone without hesitating. The system immediately chimed in my mind, asking if I wanted to use it. I said yes. The stone dissolved into light right in my palm and formed a lottery while floating in front of my eyes. For terms, all white, just like I expected. Toughness, a defense boost of 130%. Charge, which gives a 130% power boost on your next attack while running. Great strength, a 130% strength multiplier. And Blood Bowl, which bumps your stamina limit by 130%. Honestly, they were weak. A measly 30% bonus each. These look like the entries from the most basic wild monster out there, the Great Wild Boar. Every hunter's first kill and nobody's dream prize. Whatever, I just draw one randomly. I spun the wheel and landed on great strength. A gentle surge of power flooded through my body, and I felt every single cell strengthening. My muscles tightened, my bones densified, and when it was done, I could clearly tell my strength had jumped compared to before. The system confirmed it. Great strength, white tier, 130%, fusion successful. Now came the real test. I needed to know if infinite could actually stack and upgrade. I took a deep breath, grabbed another white stone, and cracked it open. Same 4 Great Wild Boar terms on the wheel. I drew. This time I got toughness. Defense boost of 130%, fusion successful. Fine, a 30% defense increase wasn't going to change the world, but it was something. Then I drew a third white stone. Toughness again. But this time the notification sounded different. The system told me that the toughness entry was undergoing a fusion upgrade. Defense multiplied to 160%. My eyes lit up like I'd just won the lottery. It actually worked. It wasn't fake. And it jumped to full 30% in a single stack. That white stone wasn't cheap, but compared to green or blue stones, it was pocket change. 1 green stone could be exchanged for 100 white stones. A blue stone traded for 100 green ones, which meant over 10,000 white stones. If I spent all of those on white draws, I'd pull at least 10,000 white terms. Even if only a quarter of them were useful, that was still 2,500 stacks. I couldn't even imagine how absurdly powerful those 4 basic entries would be if I stacked them that many times. The plan crystallized instantly. I sold all the blue and green stones immediately. Speed was everything. I opened the Federal Mall through my biological main brain, a virtual projection system that let you access the internet anywhere, uploaded the data for those divine edict stones, and waited for the evaluation. The results came back fast. The blue stone was graded as high grade, and the Federal Mall offered 500 million for it. The green stones were also good quality, bringing the total acquisition price to 510 million. 500 million. That was 5 times the price of an ordinary blue stone. Then I remembered, divine edict stone entries vary in quality, and better entries drive the price up. My parents had left me good ones, probably to pave the way for me, even though they didn't live to see me grow up. I sold them all without a second thought. Sure, a blue talent was powerful, but you had to actually draw it first. Even with only 7 or 8 entries on the wheel, the blue section was tiny. The probability of landing it was less than 1%. Not worth the gamble when I could stack whites instead. 510 million hit my account. The funds couldn't be withdrawn as cash, only spent inside the mall, which was fine because I was about to go shopping. I browsed the Divine Edict stone inventory. White entry stones didn't have many varieties, maybe a dozen types total, since white effects were pretty singular. But as long as the level got high enough, even basic effects would be insane. I settled on a stone from a creature called the Wind Spirit Beast. Its drawable entries were toughness at 130% defense, gale at 130% movement speed, great strength at 130% strength, quick attack at 110% attack speed, and slight talent, which slightly increases cultivation talent. I chose it because all 4 combat stats improved fighting power, giving a comprehensive boost. Plus, the cultivation speed talent was the real prize. With that, my strength could ramp up fast. I bought 20,000 of them. 1 billion spent. The extra money came from my parents' inheritance. They'd left me 7 or 800 million beyond what I'd already spent, and keeping a few hundred million for living expenses was more than enough. The Wind Spirit Beast stones cost a bit more than basic whites because of the full attack package and that cultivation talent baked in. White stones weren't popular in this world, but for ordinary people without talent, white entries still mattered. Each one cost 10,000, which was affordable for families who couldn't afford anything better. The downside was that choosing white entries meant you probably wouldn't achieve much in your lifetime. But they didn't know about infinite. I started by opening all the remaining white stones at home. One after another, I cracked them open and drew. Great strength, white, strength up to 190%. Blood Bowl, white, HP up to 160%. Then great strength again, and this time it hit 200% and the entry upgraded to green. The system notified me that the entry had evolved. I kept going. Soon I'd stacked strength to a 200% bonus, and the white attribute had upgraded to green. That's when I noticed something important. Past 200%, each additional white stack only added a 10% bonus instead of 30. So the upgrade curve changed after a certain threshold. No big deal though. Even at that rate, 10 white attributes still gave a 100% bonus. Getting to blue level stats would take at most 30 white attributes. I laughed out loud. 30 whites sounded like a lot until you remembered that a single blue Divine Edict stone cost 10,000 times what a white one did. My stacking method required only 30 times the materials. That was basically a freebie. I kept drawing. After more than 40 stones, all 4 of my attributes had bonuses exceeding 330%, with strength hitting 350%. The 500% mark for blue wasn't far off anymore. The basic 3, defense, strength, and stamina, needed a 200% bonus minimum to reach green. But special attributes like attack speed had different thresholds. Only 150% attack speed was needed to upgrade to green. The attribute leveling system was more complex than I'd thought. From green onward, special attributes started appearing. Things like fire control and wind manipulation. I made a mental note to grab some green Divine Edict stones when I had the cash. Then my comm buzzed. A video call. Late at night. I answered, and a projection of a young girl appeared in front of me. Before I could even say hello, she launched into me. Where was the blue Divine Edict stone I promised her? Why hadn't I delivered it yet? Didn't I know tomorrow was Yi Xiao Gij's birthday? I was to bring it to her house immediately. No greeting. No hello. Just demands. Like I owed her millions. My mind froze for a second. Who the hell was this? Then the memories clicked into place. This was Yin Shiyun, my classmate, and apparently the white moonlight that the former me had been simping over for years. For 3 years of high school, the old me had blown most of his living expenses on her, buying her all kinds of supplies. Tallying it all up, at least 10 million. 10 million. And money in this era hadn't depreciated, so that was real money. The worst part? A month ago, when the old me got his inheritance, he handed Yin Shiyun a blue Divine Edict stone. She got lucky and awakened a green attribute called Ice Control, a rare elemental type with huge potential. With that, getting into a top university on Blue Water Star would be no problem. Bright future ahead of her. If we'd been mutually in love, fine, whatever. But the former me was a full-blown, self-sacrificing simp. Yin Shiyun took everything he gave her while carrying on an ambiguous relationship with a classmate named Yi Xiao. And now she was showing up to demand a divine edict stone for her side piece. I was basically a walking ATM with a pulse. I had to admit, without my past life memories, the old me was just a brain-damaged idiot. As a good young man of the new era, getting played by a gold digger like this was embarrassing on a spiritual level. She was still yelling. Had I gone deaf? Was I ignoring her on purpose? That emotionally unstable act made me speechless. How did the former me ever fall for her? I told her to stop barking. Whether I was deaf wasn't her business. I asked her if she had some shame. Couldn't she afford gifts for her boyfriend on her own? Why was she coming to me? What the hell was she to me? The words hit her like a bucket of cold water. She just stood there, stunned. Ling Feng had cursed her. Ling Feng had actually dared to curse her. Her face, which could only be described as delicate rather than beautiful, flushed red with anger. She screamed that I'd better come to her doorstep in 10 minutes and apologize, bringing the blue stone, or she'd never speak to me again. Her voice was piercing. My ears were killing me. I picked at my ear and asked who she thought she was. Yin Shiyun, just Yin Shiyun. Give her a divine edict stone? Was she even awake? I told her to gather up everything she'd taken from me over the years and return it. Federal law said that defrauding a minor martyr's family member got you at least 5 years in prison. If she didn't want to meet her parents behind bars, she'd better start packing. Her entire family had been like vampires. Once they knew the old me had a crush on Yin Shiyun, her parents cooked up excuses like sending her to advanced combat classes or buying private lessons from powerful players, milking several million out of me. If pursued legally, 5 years would be a light sentence, especially since my identity was a martyr's child. Yin Xian looked at me like I'd grown a second head. You wanted her to return things? Things I gave her. She didn't ask me for anything. I offered. Classic deflection. I laughed coldly. She didn't ask, but her parents did. And if I gave her something, she could have refused. But when she accepted, she said she looked down on my trash level, and now that I wanted it back, suddenly she was reluctant. I told her she wanted to act like a whore while still putting up a signboard. She sputtered. You. Couldn't even finish a sentence. Guilt had her by the throat. I told her I expected everything delivered to my door by morning. If I didn't see it, I'd report it to the military. My parents' old comrades in arms would probably be happy to help collect. She'd better go beg her precious Yi Xiao to pay off the debt. I hung up without waiting for her response. My good mood had been ruined by that woman. Simply terrible luck. Right on cue, the system chimed. My supplies had been delivered, items placed in the warehouse. The divine edict stones arrived that fast. Future world perks, delivery speed was unreal. I walked out to the warehouse and saw boxes upon boxes of white divine edict stones neatly stacked in individual containers. I grabbed one, opened it, and checked the extractable entries. Same wind spirit beast package, toughness, gale, great strength, quick attack, and slight talent. Items were correct. That slight talent entry was one of the pricier white ones. 5 times the cost of a basic stone. But it was exactly what I needed most. You could have all the combat power in the galaxy, but if your base cultivation talent was weak, even multiplying your strength 10,000 times wouldn't save you. The foundation had to be solid. I chose to start extracting immediately. First draw landed on slight talent. My muscles began twitching rapidly, my whole body shifting in ways I couldn't quite describe. My strength didn't jump, but something fundamental changed inside me. I kept going. Great strength, 360%. Quick attack, 110%. Gale, 130%. The wind spirit beast was a decent second-order spirit beast, a pure elemental body. If it dropped a green stone, powerful entries like wind control and spirit body transformation could appear. Some wind spirit beast kings even carried the blue talent storm battle body. Plenty of these creatures lived in an interdimensional space not far from Xianfeng City. The city was literally named after them. Each draw took over 10 seconds. The process was mind-numbingly tedious, but I could feel my strength climbing with every spin, so I was grinning the whole way through. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, a very different scene was unfolding. Yin Xiun was in a dilapidated house in the slums, throwing everything in her room onto the floor in a rage. That hateful Ling Feng had actually dared to scold her. How dare he? Her parents came rushing in at the commotion and saw the mess. All those things together must have cost several hundred yuan, and here she was smashing them. Her mother was practically wailing about the waste. Yin Xiyun launched into her grievance. She'd just asked Ling Feng for the blue stone to give to Yi Xiao Gij as a birthday present, and not only did he refuse, he cursed at her. Her father's reaction was immediate and explosive. He wanted to give the blue stone to that little bastard Yi Xiao? The cheapest blue stone cost over 100 million, and this wretched girl wanted to hand it over like it was candy? He demanded she produce it right now. She insisted Ling Feng never gave it to her, which triggered a memory. Her parents absolutely hated her involvement with Yi Xiao because he was from a poor family just like them. Her mother didn't believe it. Ling Feng, that simping fool? He'd commit suicide if she just glanced his way. There was no way he'd refuse to part with a mere blue stone. She searched Yin Xiyun's pockets and found nothing. Yin Xiyun explained that not only had Ling Feng refused, he now wanted all the things he'd given them over the years returned, or else he'd contact the military and send them to jail. The parents froze. They knew Ling Feng's identity. Son of Ling Xian, the Grand Commander of Mystic Wind City, who died in battle. A martyr's child wasn't someone ordinary people could afford to provoke. Yin Xiyun's father slapped her so hard she stumbled to the ground, blood trickling from her mouth. He cursed her for getting entangled with Yi Xiao. What future did she have with a good-for-nothing pauper? Ling Feng had no parents, but his family was rich. She was to go apologize immediately, and if Ling Feng didn't forgive her, don't bother coming home. Yin Xiyun trembled. She'd been beaten and scolded at home since childhood. The only reason her family saw any value in her was because of her connection to Ling Feng. If he really made them return everything, they could all go to jail, and her parents would probably beat her to death first. Terrified, she stumbled out of the house under their murderous gazes. But she didn't go to Ling Feng. She went to find Yi Xiao first. Apologizing to Ling Feng was absolutely out of the question. She planned to have Yi Xiao return the supplies she'd given him, just to buy time. She convinced herself that tens of millions in supplies and one blue stone was nothing. Once she graduated, she'd pay it back in no time. Yi Xiao was a somewhat handsome young man, and when he heard Yin Xiyun's story, he got furious on cue. How dare Ling Feng demand everything back? Was he even a man? Yin Xiyun asked anxiously if he could return the weapons and cultivation resources she'd given him. The military was pressing hard. Embarrassment flickered across Yi Xiao's face. Return them? The items were already used up. How could he return what no longer existed? Instead, he came up with a theory. Ling Feng was probably playing hard to get, trying to make her anxious so she'd agree to be with him. How else could a simp like him suddenly change overnight? Yin Xiyun's eyes lit up. All right. Before, Ling Feng would be scared to death with just a glance from her. Now suddenly he was assertive? He must have an ulterior motive. She shivered with anger. That toad was trying to eat swan meat. She video called Ling Feng again. The moment it connected, she launched into another tirade. She accused him of being insidious, resorting to despicable tactics just to get her to be with him. She was very angry. The consequences would be severe. She was currently at Yi Xiao Gij's doorstep. 10 minutes to get there, or she'd never speak another word to him. She hung up before I could respond. Then she told Yi Xiao to just wait. That kid would be delivering the blue stone right away. Yi Xiao smiled and said she was the best. He'd recently learned how to make porridge and offered to make her a bowl. Her eyes lit up. How sweet. Meanwhile, I was sitting there somewhat bewildered. I'd half expected her to beg, considering among the supplies I'd given her was a blue stone worth hundreds of millions. How could she possibly repay that? Instead, I got cursed at. The thought processes of these supporting characters in novels were truly out of this world. I shook my head and made a phone call instead. Uncle Zhao picked up on the first ring. A hearty middle-aged voice asked why I hadn't called in so long. I told him I'd run into some trouble. I'd been scammed, and I recounted everything that had happened with Yin Xiyun and her demands. The person on the other end was Zhao Wu, a sworn brother of my father and a powerful gold-level expert. After my parents died, I'd been under his care, though he'd been transferred away from Xianfeng City 3 years ago, so our contact had dropped off. The moment I finished, an angry roar came through the line. Someone had dared to scam his brother's son? They were seeking death. He told me not to worry. He'd handle it personally. and make sure every single penny was spit back out. I thanked him, and then he switched tones. Why hadn't I visited lately? When was I coming over? Speaking of which, his daughter Shuya and I were both adults now. Shouldn't I consider marriage? I'd personally promised as a kid that I'd marry her. Couldn't go back on my word now. Before I could process that bomb, a female voice exploded from the other end. Dad, what were you saying? Was he itching for a beating? Then came the sounds of Zhao Wu getting severely smacked. I quickly hung up. That was Zhao Wu's daughter, Zhao Shuya. Don't let the elegant name fool you. Her temper was anything but gentle. She was basically a violent woman, and I'd been bullied by her since childhood. She'd even dragged me to Zhao Wu and made me promise to marry her. Thinking about those tragic childhood experiences made me shiver. Fortunately, when her family moved 3 years ago, the bullying decreased significantly. I told myself I needed to get stronger fast. It was embarrassing to not even be able to beat a woman. I took a deep breath and dove back into my divine edict stones. For the next 10+ hours, I didn't stop. I stayed indoors, cracking open stone after stone. By morning of the second day, every last one of the tens of thousands of white stones had been opened. My entry levels had long since passed blue. Once it hit blue, each white stack only added a 1% bonus, but that was still fine. Worst case, just stack more. 100 whites would push it up another 100%. In the end, I burned through a full 500 entries just to push everything to purple level. That meant the bonuses had reached 1000%. But at purple, white entries became almost laughably inefficient. It took 10 white entries to stack a single 1% increase. Part of that was probably the massive level gap between white and purple. Regardless, my 4,000 entries of each type ultimately only stacked to less than 1,400%. I pulled up my stats. Blood chi had climbed to 2.1, meaning my raw strength was now 2,100 kilograms. Soul still at 0.5. Same cultivation method and martial skill. But my entries were a different story. Indestructible body at purple, defense up 1,375%. Super speed, movement 1,405%. Innate divine strength 1,404%. Phantom hand, attack speed 524%. And martial arts genius, cultivation speed increased 1450 times. I was dizzy. My eyes were seeing stars from staring at the same spinning wheel for over 10 hours straight. But looking at those numbers, I couldn't stop smiling. 10 times the strength, 10 times the speed, 10 times the defense, 10 times the attack speed. Stacked together, that was enough to make my combat power leap a major realm, straight into bronze level territory. And that martial arts genius at purple level meant my cultivation speed was 1,450 times what it used to be. 1 day of cultivation now equaled 4 years of the old grind. My strength was going to skyrocket in a very short time. I hadn't even cultivated for over 10 hours, and my blood chi had already climbed from 1 point something to 2.1. That told me everything I needed to know about how powerful this talent was. I headed to my family's training ground and started working through the advanced body tempering art. This was a technique my father had left behind, far more efficient than what common families learned. The downside was difficulty. Even after 6 years of study, the old me had barely gotten a grasp of it. But today was different. The moment I started, I felt a qualitative leap in my understanding. The movements flowed many times smoother than before. New insights flooded in, and I adjusted my form accordingly. The system chimed that my proficiency had increased to proficient, boosting body tempering efficiency. I didn't stop. 2 more hours passed, and another notification. Proficiency had jumped to mastered. My body was flushed, muscles trembling uncontrollably, blood chi surging wildly. When I checked, my value had climbed from 2.1 to 2.6. In just a few hours, my base strength had increased by 500 kilograms. With the innate divine strength multiplier, that value was amplified 15 times. In 2 hours, my effective strength had surged by 7,500 kilograms. A single punch could send a small truck flying. This martial arts genius talent wasn't just a 1,000-fold improvement. It had to be several thousand times. Maybe it was because my current level was still low, so the relative bonus was higher. My talent right now was probably top tier on the entire Blue Water Star. A blue entry was already a top-tier existence in any city, and blue entries varied in strength. The weakest barely reached a 500% bonus, while the powerful ones pushed over 700%. The most elite blue entries could boost combat power by 999%, equivalent to the weakest purple entries. In 90% of cities, the strongest entries available were blue. Purple entry holders were top-tier powerhouses of the entire planet. I now had 5 full purple entries. Absolutely elite. And this was just the beginning. Just the talent I'd acquired by spending $1 billion. With enough resources and money, I could keep upgrading until these entries went gold or even beyond. The priority was clear. Find a way to improve my strength, then make money. Making money came first. Farming entries myself would take an enormous amount of time even if I had the strength, which I didn't yet. Then my stomach growled. A twisting pain hit me, the kind of hunger that only appeared after days without food. Weakness seeped through my entire body. Right. I'd almost forgotten. This much increase in strength consumed an absurd amount of energy. The only reason I'd survived this long was that nutrient solution bag I drank yesterday. I dragged myself to the dining room and pulled a gel-like bag from the refrigerator. Low-level nutrient solution. One bag kept an ordinary person fed and hydrated for 3 days. For powerful martial artists, even dozens of bags a day wouldn't be enough. The real powerhouses drank medium, high, or even top-tier nutrient solutions. Legend had it that top-tier solutions were refined from the flesh and blood of high-level fierce beasts. An ordinary person would burst from a single mouthful. Even a lick could sustain you for a month. I drank the bag and felt fullness, but my physical strength didn't recover. The absorption rate of this low-level stuff was way too slow. It was like eating during a famine, but having no actual nutrition reach your body. My stomach was bloated, but my cells were starving. I needed medium-level nutrient solutions, but then I remembered something. If digestion speed was the bottleneck, I just needed to increase my digestion speed. And there were white entries that did exactly that. I pulled up the Divine Edict store and searched. Found it. An entry called Food Supplement from a monster called the Slime, the cheapest Divine Edict stone available at just 10,000 per piece. The entry let you slightly restore physical strength by consuming flesh and blood, and slightly enhanced your physique. If I stacked it all the way to purple, would consuming flesh and blood make my strength surge? I checked my remaining funds, just over 200 million. To stack a white entry to purple would need over 1,000 entries. But after reaching purple, each additional white only added 1%. An ordinary silver entry boosted combat power by at least 2,000%. Stacking to silver would need at least 10,000 whites, plus the 1,000 needed for purple. 11,000 total. 5 entries per stone, so at least 55,000 stones. That was 500 million. I didn't have it. Purple would have to be enough for now. I bought 10,000 stones and spent 100 million. 5 purple entries for 100 million wasn't bad at all. A purple entry Divine Edict stone alone was worth at least 10 billion per piece, and almost nobody on Blue Water Star could afford one. After this purchase, though, I was truly broke. I needed to make money. Fast. But then another thought hit me. If I could find luck-related entries, my draws would become way more efficient. I searched and found them. The lowest luck entry was green tier, and the prices were steep. Little lucky at green tier, 3 million. Good luck continuously at blue, 700 million. And then there was dog shit luck, green tier, 25 million, which gave you a massive luck boost, but only after you literally stepped in dog shit. Pass. The condition was annoying, and it was nearly 10 times the price of Little Lucky. Child of Destiny at purple tier, 300 billion. That was protagonist level luck. Pick up money every time you went out. But 300 billion was completely out of reach right now. Little Lucky at 3 million was a green entry. Upgrading a green entry to purple would require roughly the same number of stacks as upgrading a white to blue. From white to blue, I'd spent about 30 entries, which came out to about 100 million. But green stones only had 3 or 4 entries, and the probability of rolling the green entry was less than 1 in 10. I'd need 10 billion worth of green stones. Still not enough money. So I shelved the luck plan for now and focused on what I could do. Hunt fierce beasts. Improve my strength. Hope that the food supplement entry, once leveled up, would let me power through. I waited at home for my deliveries and started reviewing the world structure. Mystic Wind City, where I lived, was a 4th-tier city. That meant the strongest divine realm space nearby was 4th tier, and the powerhouse guarding it was a fourth-tier golden martial emperor. The world's ranking system went like this. Black Iron Realm for martial artists. Bronze Realm for martial masters. Silver Realm for martial kings. Golden Realm for martial emperors. Platinum Realm for martial ancestors. Above martial ancestor came martial venerable, martial saint, martial emperor, a different tier, same confusing name, and martial god. These corresponded to tiers 1 through 9. Powerhouses above martial ancestor could casually reshape the landscape with their movements. Martial saints could shatter stars with a wave of their hand. Martial gods could destroy entire small star systems. That was the scale of power in this world. My current strength was only equivalent to second tier. A long way to go. But with infinite entries, my growth rate would be something nobody could match. Anyone who held a golden entry was essentially guaranteed to become a martial emperor, as long as they didn't die first. And golden entries felt closer every day. The college entrance exam was in a few days. I wondered what level I'd reach by then. Then again, did it even matter? I was already cheating with infinite. The exam felt like a formality at this point. The delivery came through in just a few hours. The mall speed was excellent. Along with the Divine Edict stones, I'd also ordered some high-level fierce beast meat, already processed and ready to eat after heating, no nutrient loss. Fourth-tier beast meat cost 1,000 per kilogram, and I'd bought 10 tons. Expensive, but a fourth-tier beast had at least tens of tons of meat on it. Once I had the strength, slaughtering a few would earn me hundreds of millions easily. I grabbed a white stone and started extracting. The slime entries were toughness, strong, pain tolerance 130%, great strength, and food supplement. All four were decent individually, but garbage at my current level. The interesting thing was that even a slime had a great strength entry. That was unusual. These kinds of entries generally belonged to beasts. I buried myself in drawing, one stone after another. The system chimed with each extraction. Blood Bull. Strong. Great strength. Food supplement. The same 4 entries from the slime, over and over, but each stack pushed my numbers higher. Blood Bull upgraded to green. The system announced that my stamina limit had reached 200%. The entry had evolved from a basic white into something green tier. Strong followed, pain tolerance hitting 200%. Another green. Innate divine strength climbed past its old cap, reaching 1,580%. Each notification was another jolt of power surging through my body. And then the big one. The system announced that food supplement had undergone a transformation. The entry was now called Abyssal Maw at purple tier. Its effect had evolved from simply restoring physical strength to devouring items to greatly restore stamina and greatly strengthen oneself. The wording alone told me this was a completely different beast from the original white tier entry. These 4 new purple entries were a game changer. I ran the numbers in my head. My stamina was now 10 times what it was originally. Previously, eating my fill once would increase my blood chi by 0.5. Now, with Abyssal Maw amplifying the absorption rate, a single full meal would increase it by 5 points. My entire growth bottleneck had just evaporated. I tested it immediately, went to the kitchen, pulled out a 10-kilogram chunk of 4th-tier beast meat, heated it up. The rich aroma filled the room, and my mouth watered. I sat down and bit in. The flavor was incredible, like the most perfectly cooked steak you could imagine, but denser, richer. A comfortable warmth spread through my entire body the moment I swallowed. My depleted stamina started recovering at a visible rate. I didn't stop. I tore into the meat like a man possessed. Large bite after large bite. Within moments, the entire 10 kilograms were gone. Completely digested. My stomach hadn't even had time to register fullness before Abyssal Maw had already processed everything. My stamina was fully restored, and the excess energy began flowing through my body, nourishing every single cell. I could feel my muscles tightening, my bones densifying, my blood thickening with power. My strength was climbing at an insane rate. When the last trace of the meat was fully processed, I was over 10% stronger than I'd been minutes ago. Blood chi had jumped to 3.25, a full 0.5 increase from just 10 kilograms, and it had taken only a few minutes. I sat there doing the math. 10 kilograms gave 0.5. What about 10 tons? That would be 500 points of blood chi. 500 points was Silver Martial King realm. Of course, the effect would probably weaken as I got stronger. The same food can't keep feeding a growing giant at the same rate. But the principle held. My strength was going to skyrocket. I kept eating, piece after piece. Abyssal Maw was living up to its purple rating in every possible way. My eating speed was frantic, but my digestion was somehow even faster. Almost before I could take the next bite, the previous one was already fully processed and converted into raw power. And as my strength grew, my digestion improved alongside it, creating a feedback loop that made the whole process accelerate. The system notifications became almost constant. Blood Chi increased to 10. Realm advanced to Bronze Realm First Heaven. Another notification. Blood Chi 20. Bronze Second Heaven. Then 30. Bronze Third Heaven. Every hour or so, another breakthrough. The notifications kept chiming like I was playing some absurd gacha game where every pull was a winner. The beast flesh reserves were disappearing rapidly, 10 tons dwindling by the hour, but the power rush was so intense I didn't care about anything else. More than 10 hours later, I devoured the last piece of meat. Noon the next day, the entire 10 tons gone. My final notification showed Blood Chi at 205. Realm advanced to Silver Second Heaven. I sat there catching my breath, though not because I was physically winded. My cultivation technique, the advanced body tempering art, had reached mastery level through all the constant use. My basic fist technique had climbed all the way to Grandmaster. And my entries, my beautiful entries, there were 8 purple ones now, each stacked to ridiculous levels. Defense at 1,375%. Movement speed at 1,405%. Attack speed at 524%. Cultivation speed at 1450 times the normal rate. Stamina at 1,260%. Pain tolerance at 1,255%. Strength at 1,580%. And Abyssal Maw for devouring-based growth. Abyssal Maw didn't replace martial arts genius, though. It could only rapidly increase my physical stats. It couldn't teach me martial arts. That's what martial arts genius was for, letting me master techniques quickly and push my combat power even higher. My strength was now locked at Silver Second Heaven. I hadn't quite reached the 5th heaven I'd estimated, but it still exceeded my expectations. This was only a portion of a 4th-tier beast's flesh and blood. If I devoured a few more, I could potentially reach Golden Martial Emperor equivalent. With my current realm and purple entries, very few people in all of Xianfeng City would be my match. The eating process was still too slow, though. High-grade nutrient solutions were made from 5th-tier and above beast meat, and a single dose contained the energy equivalent of 1 ton of flesh. The problem was the price, tens of millions per vial. But I had to know how it compared to the 10 tons I'd just devoured. I ordered one. Checked the delivery time. A full day. Nobody in Xianfeng City needed high-grade nutrient solutions. I was probably the first person to buy one in 100 years. While I waited, I needed money. The funds I had left wouldn't last long. Earning money with my current strength shouldn't be difficult. I just needed to go to the Divine Realm space and hunt. But to enter, I had to leave the city, and leaving had strict restrictions. The simplest path was joining the Divine Chosen Alliance, the most powerful force in the human race alliance, built to protect humanity. The term, God's Chosen, referred to those selected by purple entries. Only people with powerful purple entries or Bronze Realm strength qualified. Joining came with housing, a guaranteed salary from basic tasks, and privileges above ordinary citizens. Almost every ordinary person's lifelong dream was to join. Way better than a civil servant's iron rice bowl back in my old life. I could also join the military, which had better benefits and where I had connections, but the strict management and heavy workload didn't fit my situation right now. So I went to take the Divine Chosen Alliance assessment first. Past that, and I could go outside the city to hunt beasts and earn money. I went back to the safe and pulled out a fist-sized crystal. My father's legacy. I placed my hand on it, and a cold electronic voice confirmed my identity. The crystal melted, nanomaterials spreading across my body until a black streamlined armor encased me completely, almost as flexible as wearing nothing. This was the black martial armor, a grade 4 armor left by my father. With it, my combat power and survival ability would jump significantly. The nanotech retracted, transforming into a black glove on my right hand. This era's technology was insane. This kind of nanomaterial armor would have been a treasure of all humanity back in the 21st century. I headed out the door. 10 minutes later, I stood in front of a massive building, 1,000 meters tall and covering several square kilometers. It crouched on the ground like a sleeping giant beast. I walked through the main gate and immediately saw hundreds of martial artists chatting, recycling materials, going about their business. At least 1,000 people in the lobby. With Mystic Wind City's population of over 10 million, having this many bronze-tier martial artists was normal. But the moment they saw me, curiosity spread across every face. Where did this kid come from? Was the Divine Chosen Alliance a place just anyone could enter? He was probably looking for his dad. A few laughs went around. I ignored them and walked straight to the certification desk. I told the staff member I wanted to certify as a God's Chosen. The girl on the other side was clearly fresh out of college, young eyes and everything. She looked at me with a helpless expression and told me I must be mistaken. This was the Divine Chosen Alliance. Martial artist certification was next door. I explained that I wasn't at the wrong place. I was already bronze tier. She covered her mouth and gasped. Her voice carried, and suddenly everyone in the lobby was staring. An 18-year-old bronze tier? That was unheard of in Mystic Wind City. Maybe one in over 10 years. I asked if we could start the certification now. She apologized for the surprise and registered my information quickly. When she saw my age and that I was still in high school, her eyes went wide. If I passed, I'd definitely be groomed as top talent. A future martial emperor prodigy. She handed me a card. Number 15. Assessment in 1 hour. The waiting area was full of bronze-tier martial artists, some just barely qualified, and others who'd been at that level for years without passing. Over 20 people, mostly bronze first or second heaven. There was even a bronze third heaven, a pale-faced young man. I raised an eyebrow at that. If even a third heaven hadn't passed, he must not have any purple entries. An uncle walked over with a cheerful smile and struck up a conversation. Told me to be careful. This certification wasn't simple. He pointed at the pale kid and explained that during his first assessment, he'd encountered a succubus. Not only got drained, but triggered a negative purple entry called vitality depletion, which locked him to only 30% of his full attributes and tanked his cultivation speed until it went away. A green negative entry, and without a blue counter, he was probably ruined for life. Negative entries. Right, those existed. Basically negative statuses, illness, injury, curses, that sort of thing. Usually temporary, but some became permanent if you were harmed at the root. This kid had been permanently drained. His luck was questionable, but at least he could claim he'd died under a peony. The uncle introduced himself as Old Zhang and started filling me in on the certification details. 2 assessments. First was basic data, vitality, burst power, entries, that sort of thing. Second was actual combat. The combat part was the nightmare. Old Zhang himself had failed it 3 times and once needed over a year of recovery. Good final results came with extra rewards and special treatment. I wondered if that special treatment involved money. If it did, maybe I should show off more. An hour passed, and the prompt came through. All martial artists to the assessment area. I was number 15. We filed into a confined space with a massive instrument in front of us. The combat power detector, capable of testing vitality, soul value, burst power, everything. But before anyone could take a position, a crushing pressure slammed down on the entire space. Everyone except me nearly fell over. The pale young man's eyes rolled back, and he collapsed completely. A grim-faced old man descended with his hands behind his back, wind surging around him. Several figures in God's chosen battle armor flanked him. He glanced at the kid on the ground and snorted. Threw him out. I figured the old man had wind control. Silver, third heaven realm. Not the strongest, but his entrance was dramatic. Then he noticed me. A kid showing no signs of discomfort under his wind pressure. He reined in the wind and introduced himself as Elder Zhao, our examiner. Basic data test first. Meet bronze 1-star standard and you pass. The first tester, a middle-aged man named Lu Dayu, stepped into the machine. Blood Chi 11. Burst power 21,458 kilograms. Speed 34 meters per second. Defense 13,541 kilograms. For white entries. Overall rating, 3 stars. Burst power was the maximum combat output when using entries, cultivation techniques, and martial arts combined. so it was typically much higher than raw base stats. I noticed the machine could detect entries. Old Zhang leaned over and explained that entries could only be self-displayed. You could show whatever you wanted, hide what you wanted, but you couldn't fake entries that didn't exist. So the displayed number would only be less than the real count, never more. I asked if displaying entries was mandatory. Mine were all purple, and showing even one would cause a scene. Of course, I was just asking. I definitely planned to display them. Otherwise, how would anyone know how strong I was? Where would the resources come from? Old Zhang said white entries weren't worth displaying, but if I had powerful ones, it was better to show them for better benefits. 1 out of every 7 or 8 people tested had green entries, which was unusual. Normally, you'd find 1 green among 30 or 40 candidates. Old Zhang had the best showing so far, 3 green entries, 1 combat, and 2 auxiliary. Decent talent. He might become a martial king someday. This made me look at the boisterous uncle in a new light. He might look like an average fighter who chatted up kids in waiting rooms, but 3 green entries meant real potential. The testing process itself was straightforward but thorough. Each candidate stepped into the machine, blood was drawn for the vitality test, then they hit the fist strength device, ran the speed track, and stood in the defense zone. The whole thing took about 5 minutes per person. The machine could even detect entries, though only what you chose to display. You could hide entries, but you couldn't fake ones you didn't have. So the displayed number was always a minimum, never the real total. I watched each person go through the process, noting the variations. Some candidates barely cleared the bronze 1-star standard, their numbers painfully average. Others pushed well above it, clearly holding back on entry displays to avoid attention. Smart. Showing off your full hand during certification was a good way to get targeted by people who wanted to study your weaknesses before you even stepped outside the city. Then it was my turn. I walked into the machine. Inside was an independent space with a 1-meter pillar rising from the ground, a handprint on top. I pressed my hand down and felt a prick. Blood flowed into the pillar. The announcement came. Blood Chi 208. Realm, Silver Martial King, 2-star. I'd gained 3 more points just waiting around for an hour. My talent really was something else. The pillar sank back, and a fist strength testing device rose from the ground. I took a deep breath, clenched my right fist, and threw it forward with everything I had. The boom echoed through the entire testing space. Everyone outside jumped. What exploded? The sound was nothing like what they'd heard during their own tests. The fist strength device was supposed to withstand 1,000,000 kilograms of force. Alarm screamed from Elder Zhao's biological brain. The strength testing device was severely damaged. It had lost testing capability entirely. Elder Zhao mumbled in shock. Even he couldn't blow up that machine. The door opened and I walked out, somewhat awkwardly. I'd used a little too much strength and accidentally destroyed the tester. Would I be asked to pay? Because I had no money and definitely no life to give. Everyone peered through the door. The machine was shattered into pieces. Every person in the room swallowed hard. Did Ling Feng really have a burst power exceeding 1,000,000 kilograms? What realm was he in? Elder Zhao approached with a completely different attitude now, all his previous arrogance replaced by a beaming smile. He asked about my blood chi and whether I'd mind revealing my entries. I told him 208. As for entries, I didn't think it was necessary right now. The room froze. 208. Silver 2-star. Already at the silver realm, and just coming for the assessment? Combined with my age and the fact I'd blown up the testing device, my entries had to be at least blue. A blue entry plus an 18-year-old silver 2-star. What kind of monster was I? Elder Zhao quickly arranged a new examination room and led everyone to the 3rd floor. The Divine Chosen Alliance building only had 4 floors. First floor was the mission hall and assessment area. Second floor was for official members. Third floor was for silver martial kings only. Fourth floor was restricted to golden martial emperors. The martial artists coming with me were whispering to themselves. They never thought they'd set foot on the 3rd floor. And it was all thanks to me. The martial kings already on the 3rd floor were confused. Why was Elder Zhao bringing a group of pre-certification candidates up here? The 3rd order power tester downstairs had been blown up, so they needed the 4th order one. That statement alone made everyone's eyebrows rise. The tester was blown up? A strong individual from the military or another force must be coming to join the alliance. Elder Zhao just chuckled and led us to the testing space where martial kings measured their power. A colossal machine several times larger than the previous one sat in the room. I walked in without hesitation. The martial kings were already gossiping. Some kid, probably just started university, here for certification? But who blew up the tester? Nobody there had that kind of strength. You'd need to be at least silver triple heaven to wreck a third-order tester. Then a clear, cold voice cut through the chatter. A graceful, mature woman descended, stepping on flames. Every martial king immediately bowed and greeted her. Guild leader. This was Sikong Shiyun, the newly assigned branch guild leader of the Mystic Wind City Divine Chosen Alliance. A golden fourth heaven powerhouse. A super genius with purple entries, still young, a student from Imperial Capital University on Blue Water Star, doing a few-year internship before moving on to guard stronger cities. Elder Zhao explained the situation to her. A genius who hadn't even entered university yet, and he'd already blown up the third-order tester. Her eyes lit up with curiosity. Not yet in university meant less than a year since awakening entries. To possess that kind of strength in under a year meant either a born combat genius or entries that were extremely powerful. She leaned toward the former. Even the richest person in Mystic Wind City could only afford 1 or 2 purple stones by pouring out all their wealth, and the probability of drawing purple entries was minuscule. If someone had drawn purple entries, she'd definitely know as guild leader. Then a boom came from inside. The fourth-order tester trembled violently. Making a fourth-order tester shake meant at least 3 million kilograms of force. My results came out. Blood Chi 209. The room erupted. Not high, but lower than they'd expected given the force. 3 million kilograms of strength, but only 209 blood chi. That was a burst multiplier of over 15 times. Excluding cultivation technique and martial skill bonuses, my inherent burst ratio had to be at least 10 times. Even with strong technique comprehension bringing it down to 8 or 9 times, my entries had to be at least a blue-grade masterpiece. At 18, with a silver realm and that kind of burst ratio, I was a super genius. The kind of name that would echo across the entire Blue Water Star. The martial kings started whispering excitedly. When did Mystic Wind City produce such a genius? The last time was Grand Commander Ling Xin decades ago. Unfortunately, he'd sacrificed himself too early. Otherwise, he'd be a martial ancestor by now. Then one of them connected the dots. Ling Xian, Ling Feng. When Grand Commander Ling Xian died, his child had just been born. Calculating the age, exactly 18. The room went electric. Could this Ling Feng be Grand Commander Ling Xian's son? One martial king said he'd been saved by the Grand Commander back then. Another said he'd always noticed a resemblance. The Grand Commander's son had finally grown up and inherited his talent. Some of the older martial kings were tearing up. Ling Xian had been the strongest prodigy in Mystic Wind City in nearly 100 years. Rumored to have purple entries he'd never shown. And now his son might be standing right here. One of the newer martial kings was confused. Why was everyone so emotional about Ling Xian specifically? There'd been dozens of grand commanders over the centuries. The answer came fast. 20 years ago, a fifth-order ferocious beast tide had hit Mystic Wind City. Grand Commander Ling Xian had turned the tide alone, resisting 3 fifth-order beasts simultaneously and saving the entire city. He'd been made Grand Commander after that. The man speaking had been 25 at the time, fresh out of university, and would have died if not for Ling Xian. And the city itself had been renamed 18 years ago, on the very day the Grand Commander's son was born. The world believed the name came from a wind element foreign race secret realm, but only those who knew the inside story understood the real origin. Sikong Shuyun, listening nearby, was also stunned. She knew Ling Xian. He was, without question, the #1 in Blue Water Star University's hidden dragon tower to this day. His record had never been broken. She'd tried to beat it during her own university years, and by graduation, she was still 10 places behind. The gap between second place and Ling Xian was a cliff. That's how dominant he'd been. For some unknown reason, he'd vanished after graduation. Now she learned he'd died barely 2 years out of university. And Mystic Wind City supposedly had no genius capable of killing him. He'd been a martial ancestor at graduation. She caught herself. This should just be the same name. The Grand Commander they mentioned was only martial emperor level, while Senior Ling Xian had been much stronger. My remaining scores appeared. Burst power, 3.65 million kilograms. Speed, 354 meters per second. Defense, 388 kilograms. Entries, purple times 1. Overall rating, 7 stars. An ordinary martial emperor first heaven with only green entries would be blown apart by a single punch from me. And I was only silver 2-star. The numbers were terrifying. Most shocking of all, I had a purple entry. A purple entry holder was the most top-tier genius on the entire Blue Water Star. Only a handful appeared each year. The testing instrument door opened, and I walked out. Every martial king compared my face to their memories of Grand Commander Ling Xian. The resemblance was about 80%. No doubt about it. I was Ling Xian's son. I immediately noticed Sikong Shuiyun. For 2 reasons. First, her figure was stunning. Long fair legs, captivating presence. Second, and more importantly, the aura rolling off her was definitely martial emperor level. Not even an ordinary one. When did Mystic Wind City get such a super genius? Then I noticed the excited stares from the surrounding martial kings and felt bewildered. Why were they so happy to see me? I knew I was handsome, but this was excessive. Sikong Shuiyun descended, came in front of me, and extended her hand. She introduced herself as the president of the Divine Chosen Alliance and asked if I had time for a private talk. I asked about the assessment. She said with my strength, the practical assessment was unnecessary, but if I wanted to try, I could. The Alliance's assessment had several levels, and even at my strength, I wouldn't be bored. I wanted to see what the foreign races of this world looked like, so I agreed. She offered to directly conduct the Martial Emperor Certification Assessment for me. The martial kings in the room immediately panicked. That assessment was only for Martial Emperor realm candidates, and I was just a martial king. What if something went wrong? They were more afraid of something happening to me than I was. I noted how united the Alliance was, protecting me before I'd even joined. Sikong Shuiyun calmed them down. With her there, nothing would happen. And if I truly was Grand Commander Ling Xian's son, a mere martial emperor assessment should be easy. If I couldn't even handle that, I'd be disgracing his legacy. The martial kings suddenly saw the logic and all nodded in agreement. I was internally confused. How did everyone know I was Ling Xian's son? Dad was just an ordinary martial emperor, right? Why was he so popular? Then I thought harder. My parents had me at 24, and both were already martial emperors at that age. By no means ordinary. Their future would have been at least martial ancestor, possibly martial venerable. Without my past life memories, the old me had been not only a simp, but also an idiot who couldn't see what was right in front of him. I went with Sikong Shuiyun to the 4th floor via a floating elevator. The 4th floor was restricted to martial emperor-level powerhouses. Only about 20 such individuals existed in all of Mystic Wind City, 5 of whom were in the Divine Chosen Alliance. Right now, only Sikong Shuiyun was present. She led me to a massive dome-shaped room, 1 kilometer in diameter and several hundred meters tall, occupying more than half the Alliance headquarters. The Martial Emperor assessment had 2 parts. Basic strength certification, which I'd already passed. Now came actual combat. Past this, and I'd become the 18th Martial Emperor of Mystic Wind City, with all the permissions and benefits that came with the title. Plus, given my talent, the Alliance would throw in additional rewards. I asked immediately if there was money involved, or if all rewards could be converted to cash. She was visibly caught off guard. Yes, there was money. Given my age and purple entry, the one-time cash reward would be at least 1 billion. Plus blue stones and other materials. Converting everything to cash would be at least 3 billion. The permissions and benefits couldn't be bought, of course. 3 billion. Could I also sell the fierce beasts I killed later? Her mouth twitched. Why was my mind full of money? Don't people usually care about the permissions and benefits? She told me to get ready, and then erupted into flames, soaring into the air. The heat coming off her was intense. A golden 4th heaven powerhouse, putting on a display. I activated the black martial armor. It spread from my right arm across my entire body, majestic and domineering. The nanomaterial moved like liquid metal, fitting perfectly to every contour. I clenched my fist, and a black long spear materialized in my grip. I swung it casually through the air, and it emitted a piercing cry, the kind of sound that made your teeth ache. The ground beneath my feet started cracking from the pressure alone. Energy cages rose from fissures in the floor. Inside were 10 fierce beasts, each over 10 meters tall, all 3rd tier, 7-star, and above. Their auras were terrifying. The cages opened and the beasts charged. Good timing. My innate divine strength erupted. I brought the spear down on the first beast's chest with over 3 million kilograms of force. It exploded from the chest outward. Blood splattered everywhere. Sikong Shuiyun, watching from above, frowned. Completely without technique. Just brute force. Was this kid afraid of burning through his stamina? Geniuses who killed above their level always had this weakness. Their total blood chi was the same as ordinary people, but outputting more power consumed proportionally more energy. At this rate, I wouldn't last until a 4th-tier beast emperor appeared. But I was already slamming the spear into the next beast. Another earth-shattering impact, another beast exploded. The scattered fragments sent the others stumbling. Before they recovered, I was already among them, smashing heads one after another. 10 3rd-tier 7-star beasts, dead in under a minute. My armor was stained red, then trembled slightly, and shed all the blood onto the ground. The beasts condensed white divine edict stones as they died. All white, worth only 10,000 each. 3rd-tier beasts always dropped white stones. Less than a 1 in 10 chance of green. The carcasses alone were worth hundreds of thousands each. I pocketed the stones. At least 100,000 from the stones, plus several million from the meat. Making money at this level was absurdly easy. I looked up and told Sikong Shuiyun it was a bit too little. Could there be more? Her mouth twitched. She knew exactly what I meant. I was complaining about the lack of money. She'd seen through this greedy kid completely. She decided to give me more. She'd caught some alien race members when she first arrived in Mystic Wind City. Good practice fodder. The ground cracked open again, dozens of fissures this time. Cages rose, each containing a burly orc wielding a massive cleaver, all 3rd tier, 5-star. 100 of them. I could see entries above their heads, mostly white, but each carried a green entry. For types, Robust for strength at 200%, Blade Mastery Novice for blade power at 200%, Iron Skin for defense at 300%, and Endurance for stamina at 200%. I was drawn to Blade Mastery Novice immediately. A weapon type entry. If I absorbed it, could I become a weapon master instantly? And it seemed stackable with other entries. Stack it with Robust, and you'd get a combined 400% boost. Stackable entries were genuinely good things. Once I got it to purple, it could reach at least 1,000%. Combined with innate divine strength's 1,500%, that would be a full 2,500%. At that level, purple entries could actually outperform silver ones. The cages opened. The orcs charged, screaming about killing humans. I smiled. My black spear shifted, transforming into a long blade. I tapped my foot and exploded forward. My speed hit its extreme limit. I became a black shadow weaving through the orcs at a terrifying pace. Every time the shadow passed one, its head dropped to the ground a second later. Sikong Shuiyun's pupils contracted from above. That speed had to be a speed-type purple entry. Did this kid actually possess 2 purple entries? Speed-type entries were far more valuable than strength-based ones. Improving speed was much harder than improving strength. With enough speed, even an opponent 10 times stronger was dead as long as you had a decent weapon. High-level speed entries were extremely rare, and displaying one at purple level would elevate my talent grade by another tier entirely. 1 purple entry and 2 were completely different concepts. 100 orcs. Every single one of them with their heads in the air. Done in moments. I stood among the corpses, deep in thought. Orc bodies probably couldn't be sold, right? They had human-like appearances. The idea of using their meat for consumption was off-putting. Some small factories probably did it anyway with materials the big factories wouldn't touch. Then waves of energy pulsed from the orc bodies. White Divine Edict stones materialized, along with 10 green ones. Those green stones were worth at least 20 to 30 million. The orcs all had combat-type entries. I asked Sikong Shuiyun if it was time for 4th-tier beasts yet. These 3rd-tier ones were too weak. As for Blade Mastery Novice, I obviously couldn't fuse it in front of her. She confirmed and tapped her wristwatch. A huge fissure opened hundreds of meters away. An angry roar erupted, and a giant beast with fiery red fur rose from below. A massive fire cloud lion. It glared hatefully at Sikong Shuiyun. She'd captured it, and it had refused to submit rather than become a mount. She warned me it was a tier 4, 1 star with 3 green entries. I checked its head. Beast King at green, which suppressed enemy beasts. Fire Control at green, Fire Skill Power 300%. Robust at green, Strength 200%. Plus 2 white entries, Thick Skin and Blood Ox. 5 entries total, 3 green. Decent. I was interested in the Fire Control entry. Every guy wanted to play with fire. If conditions allowed, I'd master all elemental entries. Once entries got high enough, white entries couldn't upgrade into advanced elementals anymore, so upgrading purple entries was the better path. The iron gate opened. The fire cloud lion roared, sending a violent heat wave in all directions. The temperature skyrocketed. Under its shroud of flames, it walked out like an arrogant god, looking at me with disdain. Then it glanced up at Sikong Shuiyun with a hint of fear. Her power was something it couldn't resist, but becoming a mount for a tiny human was absolutely out of the question. I told the big lion it looked pretty awesome. It growled in agreement. Then I moved. Under divine speed, I became a black shadow and charged. The lion's pupils contracted violently. Before it could react, I was beneath its head. I brought the blade up in a devastating arc. The lion roared and tried to retreat, but was a fraction too slow. A 1-meter gash opened in its neck. Blood sprayed, burning holes in the ground. I was already beside it again for another strike. The lion blasted a pillar of fire at me, but my armor blocked every flame. The blade cut into its belly. Internal organs spilled out. It slapped at me in pain, but I was already gone, reappearing above its head. The blade shifted into a spear, and I drove it down through the lion's skull. My right hand twisted, and blood and brain matter erupted from every orifice. The massive body trembled and crashed to the ground. Sikong Shuiyun was shocked. She'd thought I was just a brute force guy. Turns out I was a combat genius. Every step had been calculated. The fastest way to kill the lion given my strength. Then something unexpected happened. Dazzling blue light erupted from the lion's body. A blue divine edict stone condensed and fell to the ground. A big drop. It actually dropped a blue stone. I was instantly excited. The lion didn't have blue entries on it, but it could still drop high-level stones. Even purple and silver were possible from lucky kills. This was normal. 7th and 8th order beasts carried purple entries, and silver required 9th or 10th order. Among beasts the human race could currently defeat, there were simply no golden entries to drop. All golden entries in existence came from extremely low probability drops from low-level beasts. Across 7 or 800 million life planets controlled by humanity, all the golden entries combined could still be counted on one hand. The blue stone contained 5 entries. 3 were blue and all top grade. Beast Emperor, which gave an extremely powerful suppression effect on beasts. Fire Control at blue, Fire Skill Power increased 700%. And Great Strength at blue, 700% bonus. The other 2 were green. Regular blue entries gave a 5-fold bonus, but these gave 7-fold. This stone was already more powerful than ordinary purple stones. A 60% chance of drawing blue. The value alone had to be at least 2 billion. I couldn't believe my luck. I hadn't added any luck entries, had I? And I just pulled this? Of course, no matter how good it was, I'd have to sell it. Using it myself would be a waste. With this money, I could stack the same entries enough for at least 1 silver. Why bother with this purple when I could get a silver? I was rich. This guild master was truly a good person. Sikong Shuiyun flew down and congratulated me. Unparalleled luck on the first 4th tier kill. I played it cool. Just luck. She told me I'd passed the Martial Emperor certification. The entire process had been uploaded to headquarters on Blue Water Star, and they'd already approved my qualifications. I was now a certified Martial Emperor level expert of the Human Federation. I asked when the reward would be issued. Within today, probably. Then she asked if I was really short on money. Had I taken out online loans? Her gaze as she said it made it clear she wasn't talking about legitimate loans. I quickly explained and pulled out the Abyssal Maw entry. I said I had an entry that required massive resources to fuel my strength growth. That was how I'd raised my realm so fast in just a few days. Her pupils contracted. Not from the nature of Abyssal Maw, but from the quantity. 3 purple entries. I already had 3. What kind of monster was I? 1 purple entry made you a top-tier genius on Blue Water Star. 2 made you a super genius rarely seen in 100 years. 3. 3 would make you a top-tier genius across the entire Shintian starfield, which contained millions of life planets. She asked if I was even human. My mouth twitched. I was a genuine human, thank you very much. She didn't press further, gave me my Martial Emperor medal, and left. I wandered the Alliance for a bit, found nothing else to do, and headed home. Hunting outside the city wasn't necessary anymore. Between the 3 billion coming later and the minimum 2 billion from this blue stone, I'd have at least 5 billion. To hunt that much, I'd need to kill over 100 fourth-tier beasts, and even if I could beat them, I couldn't find that many. Back home, I listed the blue stone on the Federal Mall. The moment it went up, a staff member contacted me. The stone was evaluated as top grade, and the mall offered 2.5 billion. 500 million more than I'd expected. I could have auctioned it for another 1 or 200 million, but that would take 6 or 7 days. I sold outright and asked for immediate spending access. Since I was a certified Martial Emperor, they granted me a temporary credit limit of 2.5 billion to be cleared once the stone was received. My balance read a full 2.5 billion. Time to go shopping. I needed to upgrade martial arts genius to silver, which would cost about 2 billion. Abyssal Maw needed only 1/5 of that, so 400 million. After both, I'd still have 1.1 billion. I wanted a weapon type entry and a fire control entry, but fire control was expensive, starting at millions as a green entry, meaning upgrading to silver would cost at least 4 billion. Out of reach. I'd settle for purple for now. I bought the stones for Abyssal Maw and Martial Arts Genius first. For the weapon entry, I chose the spear. Why? Because it was cool, obviously. Prices were similar for all weapon types, so money didn't matter. Being cool was for life. Then I stumbled on something interesting. An entry called Friction Heat at White Tier. It made objects heat up quickly, possibly even catching fire. It was basically a low-end version of fire control. The flames produced were ordinary, no power bonus, and extremely slow. People used it for starting campfires in the wilderness. Useless in combat. You could learn to start a fire barehanded by watching 2 episodes of a survival show. So why would you need an entry for it? But then it hit me. What if fire control, electro control, and those powerful elemental entries all had low-level white versions? They existed, just so weak that nobody considered them in the same category as the real elemental entries. If that was true, I could save 10 times the money and still get elemental powers. I ordered 40 friction heat stones. They were so unwanted that the price was the minimum 10,000 per piece, and buying in bulk got a 5% discount. Nobody wanted them. Items arrived fast. I opened one and extracted the entries. 4 whites, toughness, friction heat, great strength, blood ox. I went straight for friction heat. First extraction, nothing special. Second, ignition speed increased. Third, still white. Fourth extraction, the entry upgraded to green. And it became fire control. Flame power increased to 200%. It worked. Exactly as I'd imagined. Friction heat was the white tier seed of fire control. I laughed out loud. That saved me a fortune. If fire control had a white version, did wind control, water control, and others have similar entries? I searched and found them. Water play, friction electricity, mud mixing, blowing wind. Trash tier white entries, all of them. But if strengthened, 9 times out of 10, they'd become powerful elemental entries. I also wondered if luck type entries had white versions. Sure enough, after a quick search, I found one. Loves to laugh. People who love to laugh don't have too bad of luck. Barely gave any special ability. Already classified as one of the trashiest entries in existence. Some trait testing bloggers had spent serious money testing it, giving 10 broke people 100,000 each and having them fuse the entry, then flipping coins. Normal probability of heads was about 50%. After the entry, it went up to 53 to 55%. So it got classified as one of the top 10 useless entries. But it was a real luck type white entry. And I had the money. I spent 500 million on 50,000 loves to laugh stones. Backlogged inventory that nobody wanted, so the Alliance Mall shipped immediately, practically throwing them at me. Under 30 minutes, 50,000 stones were in my warehouse. I started extracting. Loves to laugh, luck slightly increased. Again, and on the 4th extraction, the trait upgraded to Little Lucky at green tier. Then 30 more, and it jumped to continuous good luck at blue. Then 500 more for great fortune at purple. Finally, After over 20,000 stones, it reached Son of Luck at Silver Tier. Protagonist level luck. As my luck increased during the process, the probability of pulling Loves to Laugh improved dramatically. By the end, I was extracting almost whatever I wanted. With Silver Tier Son of Luck, I could probably guarantee pulling any entry I wanted from green, blue, or even purple stones. Whether it could influence silver stones remained unknown. The value of luck entries finally made sense. The later the stage, the more expensive they got. There was a reason for the high price. With a 100% success rate on draws now, I only needed about 5,000 stones for slight talent upgrades instead of the thousands more I'd planned. That saved 8 or 900 million. If I'd known, I'd have stacked luck first. I checked how many white entries it took to increase a silver entries bonus by 1%. I had to use great strength as a test since Loves to Laugh didn't have a percentage. After stacking it 100 times, still no change. 1,000 times, and it finally moved by 1%. That meant to upgrade this silver entry to a golden entry at 4,000% bonus, I need to stack white entries 2 million times. At least 20 billion. Money was manageable compared to the cost of a golden stone, which was over a quadrillion. But the time was brutal. At 1 extraction per second, I could manage 80,000 per day at most. Over 20 days for a single golden entry. Too slow. I was used to rapid improvement now. Then I remembered green entries. Higher tier, so the ratio should be better. I bought 100 green great strength stones for 100 million. Just 10 extractions, and the silver bonus increased by 1%. 20,000 total to reach gold. That was 100 full-time savings. Just a few hours. With Son of Luck guaranteeing green pulls, the cost wasn't a penny more than using whites. I'd just have to use blue entries to push from silver to gold, but the prices were similar. Over the next 3 hours, I fused a brand new silver entry. Every 3 hours, another one. I stacked more than a dozen silver entries total. By the morning of the 3rd day, it was done. I collapsed on the ground, exhausted. Not physically, but mentally. Opening thousands of stones in a row would drain anyone's mind. I raised my right hand. A ball of purple flame erupted from my palm. The temperature skyrocketed instantly. I quickly extinguished it before it caught the place on fire. The vermilion bird divine flame was terrifying. At later cultivation stages, its temperature could reach several million degrees. Nothing could withstand that. I couldn't use it casually, or the entire building would turn to ash in seconds. I snapped my fingers again. A blue-black lightning bolt flashed across my fingertip and vanished. 9 Heavens Divine Thunder, Silver Tier. Even a wisp of it could kill golden martial emperors easily. If I encountered that fire cloud lion now, I could snap my fingers from 1,000 meters away and finish it instantly. These 2 entries were enough for now. The remaining money should go to nutrients. Speaking of which, had Sikong Shuyan lied about the reward money? She said it'd arrive the same day, but nothing had come through. Had someone embezzled it? I opened the Federal Mall and bought 50 advanced nutrient solutions. 500 million spent. The remaining funds were nearly gone. Because of the bulk purchase, the mall accelerated delivery. 4 or 5 hours at most. I took a nap while waiting. A few hours later, the smart house system notified me that the nutrients had arrived. I went to the warehouse, grabbed the high-grade nutrient solution I'd bought earlier, and pulled out a tube of blood-red liquid. Drank it in one gulp. The devouring earth entry exploded into action. An endless stream of power surged into my limbs and bones. I immediately started cultivating with the advanced body tempering art. Even though I hadn't been actively cultivating these past few days, my comprehension of the technique had reached grand completion. I could see dozens of ways to improve the basic fist art with just a little thought. And as I cultivated now with all my new talent, I noticed even more flaws in the advanced body tempering art. I started modifying them one by one. The system notified me that the technique had been upgraded to 5th tier, a top-tier cultivation method on the entire blue water star. With devouring earth, my cultivation speed was like light speed. One advanced nutrient solution was completely digested in under a minute. My blood chi was climbing by 10 points almost every second. It had already reached 454, silver 4th heaven. One advanced nutrient solution now brought me over 100 points. If 50 of them could push me to Martial Emperor 2nd heaven, that would be the strongest existence in all of Mystic Wind City. Even an ordinary 6th-tier martial ancestor might not match me with these silver entries. I drank all 50, one after another, bottle by bottle. If anyone saw a silver-tier martial artist downing advanced nutrient solutions like they were juice boxes, they'd be scared to death. Ordinary martial emperors could only handle one sip at a time and needed a full week to recover before they could eat anything else. These were solutions made from 5th-tier and above fierce beast meat. An ordinary martial venerable could sustain themselves for several weeks on a single dose. For anyone below martial venerable, even licking the stuff would cause them to burst. Drinking 50 bottles at once should have been a death sentence. It was like swallowing a bomb, but my body devoured every drop. The devouring earth entry went into overdrive. Violent power spread through my skeleton, muscles, and every individual cell. My entire body was trembling, shaking at a frequency that would have shattered an ordinary person's bones. Blood chi rolled through my vessels at extreme speed, a torrent of energy flooding every pathway. My skeleton cracked and reformed. My muscles tore and rebuilt themselves denser. Even my cells were dividing and strengthening at a visible rate. The power surge was so intense that the air around me distorted with heat. And through it all, my strength surged at a terrifying pace. Blood chi numbers climbing like a rocket gauge that someone had kicked. By the time I finished the last bottle, I could feel the energy still flowing, still being processed, still converting into raw power. The devouring earth entry didn't waste a single drop. While I was in secluded cultivation, an important discussion about me was taking place in the imperial capital of Blue Water Star. The Blue Water Star Central Council, the highest authority on the entire planet. The speaker and council members gathered to discuss development strategies. But today, they'd convened for one person. The first seat was occupied by a middle-aged man in black armor. His aura was bottomless. This was Sikong Jun, the speaker of Blue Water Star, who'd just returned from the battlefield. And Sikong Shuiyan's father. Don't let his young face fool you. He was over 60, but after reaching 6th-tier martial venerable, his aging had slowed dramatically. Below him were the council members, each at least martial venerable realm. In the center of the table, a projection showed my fight against the Fire Cloud Lion. The council members were full of exclamations. Terrifying speed, definitely a speed-type purple entry. Also a power-type purple entry. Combined, those basic entries already matched an ordinary silver entry. Born for battle. And he looked familiar. Wasn't he Ling Xian's son? That Ling Xian from over 10 years ago? His son was already this old. Talent no less than Ling Xian's back then. Unfortunately, Ling Xian had died. Otherwise, he'd probably be one of us now. Sikong Jun spoke calmly. Ling Feng had another entry, Abyssal Ma, a devouring-type talent. Combined with his 2 combat-type purple entries, his growth speed would be extraordinary. He'd likely reach Martial Emperor in just days. With sufficient resources, Martial Venerable within 3 years was guaranteed. Some council members were surprised. A devouring-type talent was rare. With that, reaching Martial Venerable within 3 years was no problem. Though one member pointed out this type of talent was an advanced overdraft of potential. The highest future achievement would be Martial Venerable at most. Otherwise, with that cultivation speed, he might even reach Martial Saint someday. Another member pushed back hard. That wasn't overdrafting, that was reaching the destined realm in advance. If 2 people had the same talent, and one peaked at 20 while the other peaked at 70 or 80, the one who got there first had 100 extra years to slowly improve. The other one only had a few decades of improvement time. The ultimate realm would definitely be higher for the devouring type user. The head start mattered more than people realized. The debate went back and forth for a moment. Then Sikong Jun laid out his actual plan. The Mystic Heaven Divine Domain. He intended to fully cultivate Ling Feng and have him represent Blue Water Star in the selection. The registration requirement was reaching Martial Ancestor Realm before graduating from university. The room went quiet at the name. Mystic Heaven Divine Domain. Counting the time, wasn't it only a little over 10 days away? They probably wouldn't make it this year. Was he planning for next year? Next year, Ling Feng could indeed make it. By then, his realm would be at least Martial Ancestor 3rd or 4th Heaven. Maybe he could actually pass the assessment. The Mystic Heaven Divine Domain was a powerful god domain within the Mystic Heaven star system, filled with extremely rich heaven and earth origin energy that massively boosted cultivation speed. It was originally another world, a fantasy world with powerful martial artists, sects, rare fierce beasts, and geniuses carrying golden entries. As long as you joined it and gained benefits inside, it would be an enormous help for future achievements. The Xiantian martial god himself had designated it as the highest-level inheritance secret realm in the star system. The quotas each year were extremely sought after. Only the most talented students within the entire star system were allowed to enter. Xikongzhen looked around the table. Since everyone agreed, he would approve Ling Feng for the selection. Resources at the highest level. Master Lu, the only 7th-tier alchemist on the entire Blue Water Star, was to refine easy-to-digest elixirs. Funding would come from public funds. For now, let the kid's realm improve. As for martial arts instruction, once Xikongzhen brought him to the imperial capital, he'd trouble all the teachers with his education. Master Lu smiled. If he could cultivate a martial saint, it would be the pride of his career. The old alchemist was already several hundred years old, and a student like this would be the capstone of a long legacy. By the time all this was happening, I'd finished refining all 50 advanced nutrient solutions. I exhaled a breath of turbid air and checked my stats. Martial Emperor Second Heaven. Blood, Qi 2984. Soul, 3.5. My cultivation method had been upgraded to a top-tier 5th-order technique at grand completion. Basic fist technique at grand completion, 3rd order. And my entries were a wall of silver. Adamantite armor for defense at 2000%. Super speed at 2000%. Illusory hand for attack speed at 1000%. Heaven-defying talent for cultivation speed at 10,000 times. Endless life for stamina at 2000%. Vermilion bird divine flame for fire at 2000%. 9 heavens divine thunder for lightning at 2000%. Devouring earth for devouring everything. Son of luck for protagonist level luck. And spear Tao supreme for spear power at 2000%. A string of silver entries that nearly blinded me. But the most important thing was the realm, martial emperor level. With all these entries stacked, my combat power was 40 to 50 times what it had been before. Too bad I was out of money again. Tough break. I walked out of the warehouse and checked my wristband. 2 missed video calls. One from Xikong Shuyun, one from Zhao Wu. Uncle Zhao looking for me urgently? I called back. A burly middle-aged man appeared in the projection. He got straight to it. I told him about being scammed a couple days ago. Did I know the current Grand Commander, Wang Anghua? I remembered the old geezer. His family used to be our neighbors. I used to beat up his son every day when I was little. Zhao Wu's expression was grim. Wang Anghua had been the Grand Commander originally, but my father had disciplined him and taken the position because he was incompetent. After my father died, Wang Anghua resumed the post. And when Zhao Wu investigated my case, he discovered that nearly all of my father's inheritance had been embezzled by him. At least 100 billion. My eyes widened. 100 billion? Embezzled by Wang Anghua? That included 2 purple oracle stones, worth at least 50 billion each regardless of quality, plus other assets. Zhao Wu blamed himself for not catching it sooner. The assets were held by the state until I turned 18, and he'd been busy conquering a 5th-order god realm in another city. Only my message had reminded him to check. I asked if Wang Anghua could just refuse to return it. It turned out the 2 purple oracle stones had already been used by his grandson, Wang Tong, who'd somehow awakened purple entries and gotten admitted to Imperial Capital University. This made the situation politically complicated. Many of Zhao Wu's colleagues were at the martial emperor level, but this was no longer something they could solve directly. A genius with purple entries was protected, and the law became more of a suggestion in front of people like that. Furthermore, Wang Anghua himself was once the strongest person in the entire Mystic Wind City. Now that he had a grandson with purple entries, his arrogance was naturally rampant. Although there were laws were indeed like a mere facade in front of the strong and geniuses. If Wang Anghua made a big fuss, at most he'd spend a few years in jail, or be sent to the God Realm to fight. But the money? No way to get it back. I was genuinely impressed by the kid's luck. 2 purple oracle stones, and he'd actually drawn purple entries? That was like hitting the jackpot twice in a row. Zhao Wu told me not to worry. He'd report the matter to the Blue Water Star military. If they didn't resolve it, he'd escalate it to the Mystic Heaven Star System military. He didn't believe there was no justice for this. I told him not to bother. I could handle it myself. I also mentioned I'd come visit him in a couple of days. Hung up before he could argue. My mood had shifted. Wang Ongwa had dared to touch my money. The inheritance my dad left me wasn't something just anyone could touch. And he'd laughed in the morning hall when my dad died. I hadn't even thought about avenging that grudge yet, and now he'd delivered himself straight to my doorstep. Very good. Extremely good. He and his grandson could go to hell together and repent properly. I strode out of the Ling family home. The Wang family was throwing a grand banquet. The entire mansion was decorated with lanterns and streamers, every corner festively adorned. Martial Emperor-level experts from all over Mystic Wind City had come to congratulate them. The reason was simple. Wang Ongwa's grandson Wang Tung had awakened purple entries, making him a highly sought-after genius with a minimum future of martial sect and a high probability of reaching martial venerable. Such a genius was naturally flattered by many people. As for the source of the purple oracle stone, many people in that room knew exactly where it came from. It had been Ling Feng's inheritance. But so what? Ling Xian was already dead. Who would offend a future martial venerable for a child with no parents and no backing? The divine edict stone had already been used. It was impossible to make Wang Tung spit it out. Wang Ongwa himself was a rich second generation whose family had been in business for generations, though their luck had always been terrible. Nobody in several generations had ever awakened a blue entry. Until Wang Ongwa appeared. He'd consumed 7 blue oracle stones, an insane amount of spending, and successfully awakened 1 blue and 3 green entries. Combined with his own good natural talent, he became a martial emperor in his 40s and grand commander by 60. But as a rich second generation, he couldn't understand the hardships of the poor. As grand commander, he started reforms, and the entire military became a mess under him. Of course, the upper echelons were feasting, so his position was rock solid. 20 years ago, a beast tide had hit. 3 fifth-order beasts sweeping through Mystic Wind City. Wang Ongwa, the Grand Commander, had run. Simply run. By the time the Divine Chosen Alliance and the military reacted, the situation was already out of control. Too late for reinforcements. The city was on the verge of destruction. Then Ling Xian happened to pass by. Under his overwhelming power, the beast tide was quelled. Wang Ongwa was arrested and tried, forced to scatter his family fortune to escape punishment. Only then did the old man hold a grudge against his savior. He actually believed that if Mystic Wind City had been destroyed, he wouldn't have been put on trial. The logic of a corrupt man. After Ling Xian died, Wang Ongwa clawed his way back into power through maneuvering and the recommendation of martial emperors who'd benefited from him. He became Grand Commander again. This tenure lasted over 10 years. During that period, many martial emperors left in anger. Mystic Wind City, which had been on the verge of promotion to a second-tier city, declined because of the talent drain. At the banquet, Yin Shiyun stood in a corner, dressed in formal attire. She looked at the acne-covered Wang Tung with barely concealed disgust. If it weren't for him saving her from the military and being a purple entry user, she wouldn't have looked at him even if he had more money. In her heart, only Yi Shao was her true love. But now, looking at the once unapproachable martial kings smiling obsequiously at everyone in the room, she felt a sense of euphoria. Even the pig-headed Wang Tung suddenly seemed more pleasing to the eye. In her heart, Yi Zhao's handsome appearance was now overshadowed by a layer of dust. She sneered internally. Ling Feng, this was a circle you'd never be able to reach in your entire life. And she, through her own efforts, had successfully climbed to this level. Wang Tung felt like his life had peaked. Purple entries, and Yin Shiyun had to curry favor with him now. He'd always secretly admired her, but before this, his talent was lacking, his strength was lacking, and coupled with a childhood fear of Ling Feng, he'd never dared compete. Now, everything was different. Wang Ongwa brought Wang Tung to the front of the hall and introduced him to every martial emperor present. The flattery was shameless and immediate. Grand Commander, you're too kind. We've always believed young Master Wang had the potential of a great emperor. Just one look at the young man, and you could tell he was a dragon among men. From now on, the Wang family would have the final say in Mystic Wind City. Yin Shiyun, standing beside them, was also being fawned over by some martial kings. She basked in it. Then an excited voice announced that Divine Chosen Alliance President Sikong Shuyun had arrived. Everyone was shocked. Wang Ongwa was thrilled. He'd invited her, but hadn't expected her to actually come. His grandson must have real influence now. Even Sikong Shuyun had to give the Wang family face. Yin Shiyun was stunned. The president of the Divine Chosen Alliance had come. Wang Ting actually had such great influence. At that moment, she wanted to offer herself to him right then and there, to firmly grasp this golden bachelor. But she was also thinking about how she'd get her revenge on me later. I dared to let the military arrest her. She'd settle that score. Sikong Shuyun walked in. Stunningly beautiful, graceful stride. Her appearance making everything else in the room seem to fade away. Compared to her, Yin Shiyun was like dirt next to a diamond. Wang Tung stared and realized for the first time what a true beauty looked like. His previous idea of attractiveness had been embarrassingly small. Yin Shiyun's face darkened with jealousy. She was furious that every eye in the room was on Sikong Shuyun, looking at her beauty while being simultaneously jealous and ashamed of herself. Wang Ongwa rushed forward to greet her, bowing slightly, welcoming her to their humble Wang family. But Sikong Shuyun walked right past him, didn't even acknowledge his outstretched hand, went straight to the main seat above the Wang family, sat down without ceremony, and looked down at everyone below like a queen surveying peasants. Everyone's expressions shifted slightly. This woman hadn't come with good intentions. The atmosphere had an edge to it now, like a blade barely sheathed. She narrowed her eyes and looked around the lavishly decorated hall. Then she said, her voice carrying through the silence, that the Wang family was quite grand. Spending other people's inheritance certainly didn't hurt. Silence fell over the entire hall. Nobody dared to breathe. The atmosphere turned sharp enough to cut glass. Wang Ongwa's face twitched, but he tried to respond carefully. All the money of the Wang family was earned through their own hard work. Everyone would still have to work together in Mystic Wind City in the future. Let's not make things unpleasant for everyone. Sikong Shuyun laughed. A cold, mocking sound. She asked what right a parasite who only knew how to seize a martyr's inheritance had to talk about working together. The words were merciless, and they hit like a hammer. Wang Ongwa's face went completely dark. The smile was gone from his face. Before he could respond, Wang Tung stepped forward with his hands behind his back, full of false confidence. He demanded to know what right she had to meddle in Wang family affairs. She was just the president of a third-rate city's Divine Chosen Alliance. He was a genius with purple entries. He could make her kneel and beg for mercy with just one word. Did she believe him? At that moment, he felt incredibly handsome. Yin Shiyun, watching from the side, was dazzled. This was the demeanor of a purple entry talent. But neither of them noticed that as soon as Wang Tung spoke, not only the martial emperors in the room, but even Wang Ongwa's face turned paper white. Wang Ongwa immediately started stuttering excuses, trying to leave. One by one, the guests followed. Martial emperors and martial kings made excuses and practically tripped over themselves getting out the door. The hall emptied in moments. The once lively celebration was suddenly nothing but the Wang family and a few people who'd frozen in place. Wang Tung, who'd been giddy with self-importance, stood bewildered. What had happened? Why was everyone running? He cursed the spineless cowards who were afraid with him right there. A bunch of wretches. Wang Ongwa snapped at him to shut up. The old man's face was ashen. He turned to Sikong Shuyun and started apologizing. His grandson didn't know anything. Please don't hold it against a child. Wang Tung had been admitted to Imperial Capital University, so he could be considered Sikong Shuyun's junior. Wang Tung was outraged. Why was his grandfather bowing to this woman? She was just a martial emperor. He'd be a super powerhouse someday. A martial emperor. Sikong Shuyun was genuinely amused for a moment. Then she corrected him. She apologized. She'd misspoken. It wasn't the entry that was trash. It was Wang Tung himself who was trash. She laid it out. His divine martial entry could enhance all attributes by 400%. On paper, it was one of the top-tier purple entries. But Wang Tung's other entries were all garbage. 3 green entries, none of them combat-related, none enhancing his own strength. His entry slots were completely full. Divine Martial needed strong companion entries to reach its potential. Paired with even a blue entry giving a 500% power boost, the combination with Divine Martial would hit 2000% instantly, rivaling ordinary silver entries. But Wang Tung had nothing to pair it with. His divine martial was performing worse than a single blue entry. At best, he'd become a martial sect. Martial Venerable was unlikely. And Martial Emperor? Below Martial Emperor, there were still two ranks, Martial Saint and Martial Venerable. The idea of a potential of a great emperor was a joke. Wang Tung stammered. His entry was trash? He'd been told it was top tier. She corrected him again. Not the entry. Him. Then she released her pressure. A terrifying force slammed into Wang Tung, crushing him to the ground. He spat a large mouthful of blood. She'd been amused by his threat to make her kneel, and now she was returning the favor. Wang Ong was screamed for his grandson. His eyes were bloodshot with rage. He confirmed what he'd suspected. She was here to stand up for Ling Feng. Even after Ling Xian had been dead for so many years, someone was still standing up for his son. Yan Xiun, lying on the ground from the pressure wave, had her mind exploding. Two purple oracle stones, both Ling Feng's? The Wang family had monopolized his entire inheritance. And the purple entry Wang Tung awakened was from Ling Feng's stone? She looked at Wang Tung with murderous eyes. Those were all Ling Feng's property, which meant they were hers by extension. If she just spoke up, Ling Feng would obediently hand them over. A purple entry given to such a good-for-nothing like Wang Tung. What a waste. Wang Ongwa tried to negotiate. The purple oracle stones had already been used by his grandson. As for the other assets, there wasn't a single cent left. If she had the guts, lay a hand on the Wang family. He played his trump card. Wang Tung had been accepted as a disciple by Martial Venerable Zhang Wuquang of Imperial Capital University. With that backing, even she couldn't afford to act recklessly. Sikong Shuiyan scoffed. Old man Zhang. When did he become so short-sighted, taking in such a good-for-nothing? She opened her smart wristband and video called Zhang Wuquang live. The burly old man appeared in the projection and immediately started greeting her warmly. Oh, little Shui Yun, what a surprise. When she asked about his new disciple with the divine martial entry, his face went confused. That good for nothing? He'd only handled the admission paperwork. The kid had been hollowed out by wine and women since his teens, and look at how ugly he was. Wasn't taking him as a disciple an insult to Zhang Wuquang himself? The old man was cursing so loudly that if he'd been there in person, he probably would have personally taken action. Sikong Shuiyan hung up before he could finish his rant. She looked at Wang Ongwa. His backing was gone. What did he have to say now? Wang Ongwa was finished. He tried to negotiate. The Wang family would raise the money as soon as possible. But the purple oracle stones truly couldn't be produced. His grandson would work to repay it after he grew up. Even if he couldn't become a martial venerable, becoming a martial sect was still simple. Sikong Shuiyan snorted. Let Ling Feng wait decades for a slow repayment? Wang Ongwa gave up. The family's total assets combined were only a little over 60 billion. 50 billion of that was Ling Feng's. Even emptying the Wang family couldn't cover the purple stones. That silenced even Sikong Shuiyan. It was true. Even if she destroyed the Wang family right now, they couldn't produce the full amount. Then I walked through the door. I told Sikong Shuiyan to return the 60 billion first and forget about the purple oracle stones. Wang Ongwa laughed in relief. Thank me on behalf of his grandson. Wang Tung crawled up, wiped blood from his mouth, and threatened that when he got strong, he'd take back every cent. Sikong Shuiyan asked me what I was planning. She knew my strength. I asked her a simple question. If the Wang family was gone, could she still get my 60 billion? She understood instantly and said yes, just a bit troublesome. I smiled. Trouble was the one thing I wasn't afraid of. Wang Ongwa snorted. What was I trying to do? I didn't answer. I clenched my hand and a black spear appeared. Before Wang Ongwa could react, I was gone. The spear pierced through his chest. His pupils contracted. He looked down in disbelief. Blood trickled from his mouth. I pulled the spear out. He fell to the ground. One spear killed a fourth heaven martial emperor like he was nothing. Wang Tung screamed. The rest of the Wang family shouted for someone to stop me. Some who hadn't grasped the situation rushed forward. I stomped my foot and vanished. Everywhere I went, a Wang family member got a spear through the head. In less than a minute, the hall was filled with corpses. Only Wang Tung remained, rooted to the spot in terror. I walked toward him. He dropped to his knees, babbling about being a student of Imperial Capital University. They wouldn't let me get away with this. The spear pierced through his forehead. He fell, dead. Sikong Shuiyun was a bit helpless. Killing a purple entry user would cause trouble. I didn't care. Let anyone who wanted trouble come find me. At worst, I'd reveal my full entries. Once displayed, even if I'd killed the entire Wong family for no reason, nothing would happen. That was reality. That was why the Wong family had dared to covet my property in the first place. Then light surged from Wong Teng's body. A divine edict stone was condensing, and the light was purple. My purple stone had returned. Sikong Shuiyun was shocked. Did I have a luck entry? At least a purple one? I just smiled and asked her to guess. Yin Shiyun, who'd been cowering to the side, spotted the purple stone. Her eyes lit up with greed. Purple entry. If she used it, she'd become a super prodigy. Martial emperors would bow to her. She crept toward it while I was chatting. A black flash cut through the air. My spear. It pierced through her arm and nailed it to the ground. She screamed. I mocked her. Trying to steal from me? My things weren't that easy to take. She lied. She was just trying to help me pick it up. She misjudged me. I told her to stop making that disgusting face. I picked up the stone and pulled the spear free. Blood spurted. She screamed and fainted. Sikong Shuiyun said I had no pity for women. I kicked Yin Shiyun. She wasn't even a piece of jade. Just a worn-out shoe. Sikong Shuiyun asked curiously what I considered jade. Her expression practically pointed at herself. I told her a great beauty like President Sikong, naturally. She smiled, said I was smart. She'd handle the Wong family affairs and transfer the money to me. I should go home and wait. I thanked her and asked if I could treat her to a meal sometime. She said plenty of people wanted to treat her to meals. I'd have to wait in line. Then she mentioned her dad might come see me tomorrow. Did I have time? I teased her about introducing me to her parents. Wasn't that moving too fast? She narrowed her eyes. Her dad was the speaker of Blue Water Star. If I dared mention meeting the parents in front of him, she wouldn't mind. I went pale, coughed, said I had time. Just let me know when Speaker Sikong arrived. She said that was a shame. Her dad always wanted her to find a boyfriend. My mouth twitched. The speaker was Sikong Jun, a super martial arts fanatic with a terrible temper. If I brought that up to him in any shape or form, I'd get my head smashed in. Guaranteed. The man was known across the entire planet for his short fuse and his love of testing people's combat ability personally. Then she mentioned the Grand Commander position was vacant now that Wang Ongwa was dead. Did I want it? The military would be willing to have me take it. After all, my father had been the previous Grand Commander. The legacy alone would make the appointment smooth. I didn't even know my dad had been Grand Commander. This was the first time I was hearing about it. She handed me his file from the Alliance database. The man was a genuine genius. The owner of several purple entries. Reached martial sect at 22. His talent was far stronger than Sikong Shuiyun's own university record. She confirmed it without hesitation. Her father, without question, was the #1 genius in Blue Water Star for hundreds of years. It was just that nobody knew what he experienced after graduation that caused his strength to decline so much. But before graduation, he'd been hailed as a future martial saint-level expert. I was shocked. My old man was that powerful? Without my memories, the former me had believed his parents were just ordinary martial emperors. The inferiority complex of being an orphan, even surrounded by people who cared, ran deep. It took having my memories back to realize how wrong that assumption had been. I agreed to take the Grand Commander position. With Sikong Shuiyun in the city, there wouldn't be problems even if I went to school. She confirmed she'd communicate with the military. The appointment should be announced tomorrow. She also mentioned that my father had sent word about next year's Mystic Heaven Divine Domain selection. He wanted me to participate. The sooner I reached Martial Sect Realm, the better. I was intrigued. My father had apparently participated in that selection too, around graduation time. The outcome wasn't recorded. A fantasy world with powerful martial artists, sects, and various kinds of luck sounded interesting. This world had all kinds of divine domains. Magic worlds, fantasy worlds, and even cultivation worlds. The realm divisions were different in each, but they could generally be converted. Other worlds also had their own versions of entries, and entries were everything in this world. The parallel was uncanny. After finishing his instructions, Sikong soared into the sky and left. Martial, venerable level efficiency. No small talk, no lingering, just business. The flight to the imperial capital covered over 10,000 kilometers in just over an hour. During the flight, we encountered several fifth-tier fierce beasts and powerful beast emperors blocking the way. Sikong Jun annihilated them all from kilometers away without even slowing down. Watching fifth-tier beasts crumble into a bloody mist at his mirror gave me a much deeper understanding of the annihilation entry. The power was terrifying, and honestly, kind of cool. I had to get that entry for myself. Sikong Jin also brought up the Wang Tung Divine Edict Stone. The Annihilation entry and the Divine Martial entry together pushed its value to at least double what the Federal Store's local branch had offered. 200 billion. The local branch could only appraise up to a certain ceiling, which was why they'd offered 100 billion. To get the full price, I need to sell through other planets, but the selling cycle would take 7 to 10 days at minimum. I was shocked at first. Had I been sold short? But then I remembered I hadn't actually sold it yet. Fortunately, I handed him the stone without hesitation. He was speechless that I trusted him with 200 billion. I told him, don't suspect a person you use. Don't use a person you suspect. His mouth twitched. Was that how that phrase was used? But he put it away carefully and promised the money within 5 days, or he'd advance it himself. I also mentioned the Divine Martial entry. I planned to find one after arriving at the Imperial capital. The all-attribute bonus was simply too valuable to pass up. Combined with my other entries, the combat power boost would be a qualitative leap. He nodded. He could help me look into it once we arrived. The Imperial capital had the deepest markets in the entire star system. The flight to the Imperial capital covered over 10,000 kilometers in just over an hour. During the flight, we encountered several fifth-tier fierce beasts and powerful beast emperors blocking the way. Sikong Jun annihilated them all from kilometers away. Watching fifth-tier beasts crumble into a bloody mist at his mirror gave me a much deeper understanding of the annihilation entry. The power was terrifying, and honestly, kind of cool. I had to get that entry for myself. Imperial Capital University rose ahead of us as we approached. A magnificent city spanning 700 kilometers in diameter, population several hundred million. At its center was the academy, and rising above everything was the hidden dragon tower, visible from dozens of kilometers away. Sikong Jun explained it had been built with 100 trillion in funds. 100 god realms had been stuffed inside it by 7th-tier formation masters and 7th-tier weapon masters working together. My father had been the very first student in that tower. He'd set the #1 record, and to this day nobody had broken it. 100 trillion. I did the math in my head. I could buy dozens of silver stones with that kind of money. Of course, if I actually bought silver stones with it, I'd probably lose everything on a bad draw. But building the tower had cultivated countless strong people over the centuries. From a long-term perspective, the investment was absolutely worth it. Under Sikong Jin's guidance, we landed in a manor within the university grounds. He gave me my student token and instructions. This was the manor for Hidden Dragon class students. Each person got their own. I'd stay here for now. Classes would start tomorrow. The token let me access the library. Anything within 6th tier could be chosen freely. He reminded me that what suited me was the most important, not just what sounded impressive. I looked at the token and pocketed it, then walked toward the manor. An old man emerged from the villa with a smile, followed by a small group of maids. This was old Zhou, my butler and guardian. The aura on him immediately caught my attention. Martial Sect 4th Heaven. Were the benefits for Hidden Dragon class students really this good? A martial sect serving as a butler? Old Zhou explained that his job was to act as butler and part-time bodyguard, serving one Hidden Dragon class student every 4 years. These students would at the very least become martial grandmasters in the future. It was even possible for martial sovereigns to emerge from the class. Not every butler possessed strength as formidable as his, though. I suppose only I received this particular level of treatment. Then he handed me a vial of purplish-red potion, high-energy potion, left by Master Lu for me to improve my strength. Once I finished it, I could ask old Zhou to get more from the alchemist. High-energy potion. I raised an eyebrow. This stuff was refined from the most essential parts of rare 6th-order fierce beasts. The energy contained in a single vial was equivalent to at least 100 advanced nutrient solutions. Production cost alone for one vial was over 1 billion. Retail price exceeded 3 billion. This was the reward Sikong Shuyan had mentioned. The treatment was almost too good. Old Zhou said the energy was extremely gentle. Even at my martial emperor realm, I didn't need to worry about overdosing, though it might take a long time to digest fully. Based on the absorption speed of purple entries, a single vial should last for over a month. He was shocked internally. The high-energy potion was the highest-grade potion that could be produced on the entire Blue Water Star. And they were letting me drink it as I pleased? Since when did the Central Council become this generous? I drank the entire vial right in front of him. A massive yet gentle power began spreading from my abdomen. Almost inexhaustible energy. But I only activated 1/10 of my absorption capacity, not wanting to reveal the full extent of my silver absorption talent just yet. Even at a 1/10, my blood chi was climbing rapidly. I complimented the potion. It truly was worthy of a master's product. Old Zhou agreed reverently. Master Lu was a veteran martial sovereign whom even the speaker treated with respect. Combined with his identity as a sixth-order alchemist, he was absolutely the person with the highest status on the entire Blue Water Star, bar none. I wondered aloud what kind of talent was needed to learn alchemy. If I could become an alchemist, I could hunt beasts myself, refine potions, become self-sufficient. Old Zhou explained that to become an alchemist, I needed at least 2 entries. Fire control and alchemy. Having just fire control could make me a low-level alchemist, but for high-level work, both entries needed to be decent tier. Master Lu's both were purple tier. Combined with his personal alchemy talent, he'd reached 6th order. Alchemy. I'd have to search for that entry. Combined with gold tier flame power, becoming a 6th or 7th order alchemist should be manageable. Given enough time, maybe even 9th or 10th order. Being able to refine high-energy potions myself would save enormous amounts of time and money in the future. I asked Old Zhou to take me to the library. My biggest weakness right now was martial arts and cultivation techniques. Without high-grade techniques, my combat power would be far lower than it should be during fights against opponents of the same level. We rode floating platforms across the campus. The speed was incredible, the university sprawling in every direction. A few minutes later, we arrived in front of a massive building more than 10 kilometers away. The 3 characters' library looked as if they'd been carved by a sword. Inside, students stood in an empty white room, selecting things through the air via virtual projections. The library administrator detected my hidden dragon class identity. All books open, all free. I asked for cultivation techniques that trained both fire and lightning attributes simultaneously. Several results appeared. The first one was a 6th order low-grade lightning fire body tempering art. Decent. It could increase power by a full 3 times when cultivated to perfection. But my gaze was drawn to the last one in the list. Heavenly Fire Divine Firmament Art. 6th order, top grade. And it had a special effect that made my heart skip. The higher the user's entry tier, the higher the technique's actual grade. 1 silver and 1 purple entry, it upgraded to 7th order mid-grade. 2 silvers, 7th order top grade. 1 gold and 1 silver, 8th order mid-grade. 2 golds, 8th order top grade. With 2 golden entries of lightning and fire, this technique could reach peak 8th order. A peak 8th order cultivation technique at introductory level gave a 4 times combat power boost. At great perfection, 8 times. The catch was that basically nobody in the entire human race qualified to use it, since nobody had 2 golden lightning fire entries. Except me. My entries could be upgraded beyond gold. The administrator warned me it was classified as a defective technique. The prerequisites were nearly impossible for anyone else. For me, it was perfect. Cultivation difficulty was only 6th order despite the 8th order output. I downloaded it. Knowledge poured directly into my mind through the biological brain connection. The cultivation methods, the breathing patterns, the energy circulation routes, even explanations from seniors who'd attempted the technique before. Everything loaded into my brain like downloading a software update. This was precisely about the cultivation of this technique. With all of this, I could cultivate to great perfection even faster. Technology truly changed lives. No wonder in this world, people with insufficient IQ weren't allowed to learn scientific knowledge. For those with normal IQ, you could just directly install knowledge into your brain like it was nothing. Back in my previous life, people spent years in university learning what could probably be downloaded in minutes here. Then I chose a spear technique. There weren't as many twists and turns with this selection. I went straight for the highest ranked, most powerful one available. Raging Sky. Peak 6th order. A spear-type martial skill divided into 5 stages. Introduction gave a 200% spear power bonus. Each subsequent stage added another 50%. At great perfection, the spear power bonus reached 400%. It was a serious technique for serious spear users. It must be said that martial skills couldn't be judged solely by their rank. The difficulty mattered just as much. If you could only reach the introductory level, you were better off cultivating a lower-ranked technique to mastery. The combat power bonus would actually be higher that way. But with my entries, difficulty was a non-issue. The cultivation method for Raging Sky poured into my mind alongside the technique knowledge. Under the combined boost of my 2 silver entries, the spear type and the martial arts genius, I felt myself grasping the introductory level within minutes. The movements that should have taken weeks to internalize were clicking into place like they'd always been there. A few more days, and I'd have it at great perfection. That speed was undeniably fast, even by the standards of this world. I returned to the manor with a full harvest. Time to refine that high-energy potion and keep climbing. But before that, I also thought about Wang Teng's purple oracle stone. The 2 entries he'd burst out with were both very good, especially Divine Martial, which could enhance the combat power of all attributes. That one was definitely the most valuable. If I could stack it with my other entries, the combat power boost would be a qualitative leap. The all-attribute bonus was simply too good to pass up. After arriving at the Imperial capital, I had to see if I could get the Divine Martial entry for myself. As for the other entry, Annihilation, it was an extremely rare element. A destruction-type entry I'd never even heard of before. I'd have to go back and search to find out what was going on with it. Sikong Jun had mentioned his main cultivation was the Annihilation entry, and the purple entry for Divine Martial wasn't cheap either. These 2 entries together made that Divine Edict stone worth at least double the Federal Store's initial offer. 200 billion. I'd have to remember that for future reference. That night, while I was deep in cultivation, a notification force pushed to every student who'd taken the college entrance exam on the entire Blue Water Star. Imperial Capital University was starting a month early this year. Admissions would be processed at 10 p.m. tonight. All candidates were to log in to their admission notification interface as soon as possible to check their status. The entire planet exploded. The forum crashed within seconds of the announcement. Students who'd just finished their exams and were planning grand summer vacations were thrown into absolute chaos. Summer jobs signed up for, contract fees that would need to be paid, travel plans ruined. One person complained they'd just started a summer job and would have to pay 1,000 in breach of contract fees. Another said their city's university was also starting early, aligning with Imperial Capital University. Total chaos. The forums were a flood of disbelief. College entrance exam today, classes start tomorrow? What kind of operation was this? Did Imperial Capital University have a major event? Don't overthink it, someone replied. That's Imperial Capital University for you. What does it have to do with us? In an instant, the entire Blue Water Star's student population was in an uproar because of that one notification. Only the most powerful council members of Blue Water Star knew the real reason. Sikong Jun had sent word that I would participate in this year's Mystic Heaven Divine Domain selection. At first, the council thought either Sikong Jun was crazy or they'd misheard. To cultivate me to martial ancestor in just over 10 days, with enough combat power to protect myself? This was simply an intergalactic joke. However, when Sikong Jun revealed that I actually possessed a spear-type purple entry, everyone fell silent. With that weapon entry, my combat power, which was already comparable to an ordinary silver entry holder, surged even further. This year, there truly was a chance. The chance was small, but experiencing it in advance gave a 70 to 80% possibility of success next time. Therefore, the council unanimously decided to start school early, all to provide service for me alone. Every university on Blue Water Star shifted their schedules to align. The entire academic calendar reorganized around one person's schedule. That was the kind of investment a planet made when they thought a genius might represent them. By morning, I'd finished refining the high-energy potion. All night of careful cultivation, processing every last trace of energy. My blood chi had reached over 8,000. Late-stage martial emperor. I stood up and my muscles and bones cracked with sounds like thunder. If an ordinary person had been nearby, their eardrums would have shattered from the force of it. A single punch now could destroy a tall building. I stretched and felt the tens of millions of kilograms of power coiled inside me. Much stronger than before. I remembered it was new student registration day. I hadn't officially registered yet. Old Joe was waiting at the door. He offered breakfast. I declined and asked him to show me around the school instead. He nodded, then handed me a black badge. This was my Hidden Dragon class battle armor. I pressed it against my chest, and it buzzed. Instantly, the badge rapidly transformed, nanomaterials spreading across my body until a full set of battle armor encased me. Peak 4th tier. The appearance was almost identical to the black martial armor my father had left me. The only difference was that mine had purplish-red runes, while this set was purely black. Old Joe explained that the black martial armor was an ancient civilization design unearthed from a heritage secret realm on Blue Water Star. Worth $1 billion per set, and extremely popular throughout the Mystic Heavenstar system. A student from our school had cleared that heritage realm and possessed a master version that could self-upgrade. Its value exceeded that of an ordinary 7th tier battle armor. Back then, someone had offered tens of trillions to buy it from Ling Xian. He hadn't sold. Then Old Joe looked at me more carefully. He hadn't noticed before, but I and Ling Xian looked somewhat alike. Even our surnames were the same. I showed him. I tapped my right glove, and the master black martial armor spread across my body. Then something unexpected happened. The school-issued armor badge was suddenly engulfed by the liquid of the master version. Purple runes began spreading from the absorbed area. A cold notification sounded in my mind. Black martial armor, initiating upgrade. The master armor began to transform slowly. Runes becoming more profound, details sharper, the armor's strength and the power of its condensed weapons increasing significantly. 5th tier low grade now. Old Joe was surprised. It really could upgrade. But this wasn't Ling Xian's set. It was a new one. This had already been upgraded to 6th tier by the time he left the school. Old Joe explained that Ling Xian had devoured 100 sets just to barely reach 6th tier. A full 100 billion spent on upgrades. That was expensive. 100 billion could buy a set of 6th tier high-grade armor outright. But the devouring method was the only way to upgrade the master version. I didn't mind. 5th tier low grade was enough for now. This was a weapon only a martial ancestor could afford. Below the Hidden Dragon Tower, a crowd of students gathered outside the energy barrier. Inside stood this year's Hidden Dragon class members, every single one a future martial ancestor level expert. A select few might even become martial venerable. The students outside were curious, pressing against the barrier to get a look. These Hidden Dragon class kids were the real deal. Each one carried an aura that set them apart from ordinary students. Most of them came from immensely powerful family backgrounds. A single purple oracle stone cost tens of billions. Ordinary wealthy individuals couldn't afford that. Better divine edict stones ran hundreds of billions or even thousands of billions. Even those with only purple entries wouldn't have a weak family behind them. In one corner, a girl with twin pigtails was looking around curiously. Zhao Shuya. Her exquisite beauty combined with a pure aura that immediately stirred the hearts of several young masters in the crowd. She was the kind of beautiful that made you do a double take and then question whether you deserved to be looking. A scrawny lackey was whispering excitedly to a young man named Lu Neng. Lu Neng's father was Lu Daneng, the boss of the entire northeast region and a peak martial ancestor. Lu Neng was a bona fide princeling, the kind of person whose name carried weight in half the continent. But right now, he was staring at Zhao Shuya with his mouth hanging open, completely smitten. His lackey, whose name I didn't catch, was egging him on. Lu Neng puffed up with false courage and declared he wanted her. Anyone who dared look at her again, beat them up for him. The lackey was shocked. Was this the feeling of being smitten? Lu Neng's face was bright red. He'd been known as the 1,000-man slayer of the Northeast back in high school, supposedly sleeping with a different woman every day. In reality, he was a pure, innocent virgin who'd never even held a woman's hand. All talk, no action. But his father's status made people believe the stories. He spat on his hands and slicked back his greasy hair, preparing to go strike up a conversation with his most practiced lecherous smile. But someone beat him to it. A round-faced fat man named Luo Yong of the Luo family from the imperial capital walked up to Zhao Shuya with a bouquet of flowers he'd seemingly conjured out of nowhere. He introduced himself formally and invited her to dinner that evening. Lu Ning's lackey whispered urgently, "Young Master Lu, someone was stealing his girl." But the moment he heard the name Luo Yong, Lu Neng chickened out immediately. Luo Yong's grandfather was a martial venerable. His own father couldn't touch that level. In the imperial capital, the rules were different. Power hierarchy mattered more than anywhere else. His lackey was speechless at the cowardice. Zhao Xia looked around, confused. Were they talking to her? Luo Yong puffed his chest. Only a beautiful lady like her was worthy of dining with him. Zhao Xia looked him up and down with an expression of genuine sympathy. She told him that was a shame. He was too ugly. She was afraid it would affect her appetite. The crowd was stunned into silence. Then, looking at Luo Yong's face, which was so fat it had actual creases in it, every single person deeply, profoundly agreed with her assessment. Nobody said so out loud, but the collective thought was almost visible in the air. Luo Yong, who had never been humiliated in his entire life, went dark with rage. He screamed at her for daring to insult him. Then he threw a punch. His fist suddenly swelled 100-fold, like rubber expanding, transforming into a massive fist the size of a boulder. The crowd gasped. Someone identified it immediately. A gigantification-type purple entry. During the college entrance exam, Luo Yong had transformed into a 10-meter giant and hit with 2 million kilograms of force at Silver 2 Heaven. He was one of the top 3 super geniuses in this year's Hidden Dragon class. The whispers were dire. The girl had offended the Luo family. Her future would be difficult. Alas, what a waste of talent. Zhao Xia merely extended one slender finger. The massive fist hit that finger and stopped. Completely. As if it had hit an immovable wall. Everyone's eyes widened to impossible sizes. Luo Yong, with a purple entry at Silver 2 Heaven, one of the top 3 in the entire class, stopped cold by one finger of a girl who looked barely old enough to drink. Then she flicked her finger. A terrifying force swept over Luo Yong's fist. His bones shattered violently, the cracking sound echoing from his fist all the way up his arm. Blood burst out from his skin, spraying everywhere because his arm was still gigantified, like a burst water pipe scattering across the ground. The surrounding geniuses scrambled backward in panic. Luo Yong wailed in pain. His gigantified hand rapidly shrank back to normal, but that arm was completely ruined. Even if healed, it would take a week. Zhao Xia wiped her fingertip with a look of mild distaste. His strength was so weak. The crowd swallowed hard. One of the other students whispered to Lu Neng that this woman was not someone he could handle. Lu Neng nodded vigorously in agreement. He certainly didn't want to be punched to death on his first day. Luo Yong, blinded by rage and pain, charged again, screaming that he wanted her dead. Then a black spear cut through the air. Before Luo Yong could react, the spear pierced through his chest and carried him flying backward. He slammed into the ground 100 meters away, impaled to the earth by the weapon. The sudden change made every Hidden Dragon class genius's pupils contract violently. In one corner, a young man who'd been sitting silently with his eyes closed suddenly snapped them wide open. His gaze turned heavy with solemnity toward the entrance. A calm voice carried across the entire area. Dead? With just that much strength? Who gave him the courage? I walked through the Hidden Dragon Tower's barrier and stepped inside. Everyone stared. Their first reaction, unanimously, was how handsome I was. How could one person be this good-looking? My height was perfect at 1.85 meters, my posture proud, my features sharp in a way that made several talented young girls' hearts skip a beat. The sheer unfairness of it. Zhao Xia's eyes lit up like fireworks. Little foam. She ran over immediately and, under everyone's bewildered gazes, jumped straight onto me and clung like a koala. She complained loudly that the fat jerk had bullied her. She knew from her father how strong I was, so she had zero fear about causing trouble for me. According to her father, in a few more years, even a martial venerable wouldn't be my match. Plus, Sikongzhen was backing me. I quickly hugged her and brought her down. She was hanging on a bit too enthusiastically. If she kept it up, my little brother was going to file a formal protest. She pouted. I'd promised to marry her. If someone bullied her, I had to beat them up for her.